everyone. Welcome to the Board of Education regular meeting. It is Wednesday, January 28th. Are we in compliance with open meeting laws?
Yes, we are.
Thank you. Please call the roll.
Herzog.
Here.
Hess.
Here.
Smilton.
Here.
Wright. Wyman.
Here.
DeWitt.
Here.
Ford.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. And now we have some students here this evening from Shapiro STEM, and they're going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. You can start anytime you'd like.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We can stay here.
Yep, you can stay right there.
Literally, we weren't in the video though.
Oh, we've got you, and they took a picture of you too, so that's really good. Thank you. You did a great job. How's school going this year?
Good.
Oh, excellent.
We
Okay.
go from the same school that is in your class in the code.
Well, the three of you make a great team. Appreciate it. Okay, I have a certificate for you tonight that you can put in your scrapbooks or hang on your wall to thank you for your participation and for being here tonight doing this for us. Okay? Dakota and Bennett and Jean. Thank you so very much. Thank you, parents, for bringing them. We really appreciate it. So now we're going to hear from the principal. And this evening we have Courtney Willard, who is going to give us some highlights about Shapiro STEM.
Yeah, so you can see the energy from the lack of outside time tonight. So thank you, everyone. So I'm Courtney Willard, principal of Shapiro. I'm proud to be in this role for the second and final year. And so I'm just excited to share with you some updates with where we're at coming into our second semester. So our staff is continually focused on putting students first and maintaining that forward-facing focus on growth and proficiency towards our end-of-year achievement. And so right now, when we look at our reading, as we finished up our Ready assessments, we have 44% of students who are currently on grade level for achievement. And we had some data dig meetings following that where we really dove into how students were performing, where the gaps were, and then what are we going to do to leverage that for all students to be successful by the end of the year. We also had some students get dismissed from their PRPs, which was a big accomplishment, and we have a lot of students who are on that cusp ready to be dismissed as well.
Courtney, can you explain what the PRPs are?
Yes, so they are the personal reading plans that come out of Act 20. So students who were identified based on the Ames web screener got a personal reading plan to target their area that they needed additional support with. And so we have students who were able to successfully dismiss from their plan, and then we'll continue on with that additional support in the classroom. So that's a big celebration. Right now we're in the middle of our iReady math assessment, so I don't have like a formative piece around that, but I do have our Unit 4 assessment data, which wrapped up at the end of the semester. And so we have about 45% proficiency based on that across our school. Kindergarten, first, and second grade did perform higher at about 70%, which is awesome. We want to keep that momentum going. In addition to that, staff engagement-wise, when we took our fall Gallup and the results came back, we are up 0.4 of a point from the spring, putting us in that 64th percentile, which is a really big celebration for me because we are going into a school closure and consolidation. And that just further supports all that we are doing as a system in a school to maintain engagement when things are uncertain. So big celebration there. Other highlights I have for you is we have our fourth graders who just completed their invention unit within CKLA, and they had a invention showcase. So they got to work with a partner, they created an invention, made a poster, got to share it out with all the fourth grade students and teachers. We recently had our student leadership team acknowledged at the district level for the work that they're doing to spread kindness throughout our school. They have initiatives to build character, leadership, and enhance our school climate, and so they have a lot of things going on. One of the new initiatives that is really well received is Feel Good Friday, so students nominate each other for acts of kindness. It gets read aloud, recognized, lots of energy in a building with no walls. no doors. So that has been going really well. And this week is Kindness Week. So it's dress up days, it's kindness bingo. It's a big focus on what can we do to lift each other up. We have our second grade, so we're celebrating that they took the initiative to apply for a scholarship for EAA. And so they got selected, and so they will be going out to learn more about aviation and a way to prepare for one of the upcoming CKLA units. I don't even know if they know that yet. So now they know. They're going to be going to EAA to learn about airplanes and aviation leading up to that unit of study. The last thing I have for you is we have a team who's really invested in field testing, and so most of our classrooms are field testing iPads. So kindergarten through fourth grade are field testing, and there's been a lot of energy and joy coming with that. Kindergarten's been exploring doing math workplaces on their iPads. Our other classrooms have been using it to facilitate learning in an interactive way, showcasing student work and their ways of solving problems, whether it's mathematically or it's through CKLA and writing. So lots of things to celebrate, lots of energy going forward. That's really the end of my updates for you. I want to bring forward that we are super committed to the last semester as a Shapiro student body and the staff, and we're bringing the energy, the fun, the commitment to wrapping it up nicely and looking forward to the transition into Roosevelt.
That's great.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Any questions for Courtney?
Great report. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very
All
much.
right, thank you.
Thank you for your students being here. Dr. Davis, the land acknowledgement.
Yes, as we gather today, we would like to acknowledge that in Oshkosh we are on the ancestral homelands of the Ho-Chunk Nation and the Menominee Indian Tribe of Wisconsin, who lived along the western shores of Lake Winnebago, Wisconsin's largest freshwater lake, entirely within its borders. We acknowledge these indigenous sovereign communities who have stewarded this land throughout the generations and pay respect to their elders past and present. We welcome the duty and opportunity to share stewardship of these lands.
Thank you. And next is the approval of the agenda. Does anyone want to see any changes or modifications to the agenda?
No. Thank you.
Seeing none, we will move on. Board administrative reports. I have recognition of retirements for the president's report, and we have 3 this evening. The first one is Shelley Mishanish, IST Media at South Park Middle School. She's been with the district since 2005. Heather Potrat, science teacher, Oshkosh West High School, 1993. And Kim Pruss, agricultural teacher, Oshkosh North High School, 2013.
I only know one of the 3, and actually I don't know her, but my daughter knows her well. She has had Mrs. Pruss she had her for 2 electives that she didn't really intentionally necessarily be assigned to, and they have been incredible experiences for her kind of in applied agriculture, FAA, botany, and I just think that Mrs. Pruss is a terrific example of our CTE programs, and also when we're looking at the work that elective teachers do, I think she probably has something like way more than 7 preps at a given semester or a given year, because she doesn't teach the same classes from semester to semester, and she's done it all with grace. A little bit of chaos, it sounds like, but she runs their school plant sales. She has a pet rabbit. She does everything in that department, and I'm not quite sure how they're going to survive without her, but it is she's been an incredible asset to so many different kids, exposing them to lots of different potential routes in the future.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Pruss also, and I'll get to you, Dr. Herzog, because you can wrap it all up with all of them. Mrs. Pruss also, when we did Project Curved, was instrumental in getting some extra help for us, extra plants, and really working with UWO to ensure that all of the sites had the plantings that they needed. So it was very exciting. Dr. Herzog.
Thank you. I've known all of these retirees and from one walk of life or another. I haven't worked directly with Shelley, but I know she's been a supporter of the arts, and I've appreciated that over time. Heather Potratz has always been a very positive individual, smiling and very supportive of her students. I've known Kim Pruss for a long time. While the retirement grid here shows that she was employed with the district since 2013. That's her most recent time frame working in the district. She had worked here for another 12 or 14 years prior to that, left and then came back. So I believe she has about 24 to 26 years of serving the students, staff, and community. I actually was in her classroom today. I toured some of the tech ed facilities over at North, and I understand her schedule has included food science this past semester, as well as animal science and botany and a variety of things. She's been a very positive force in the growth of our students over at North, and I agree with Mrs. Smiltnick. Replacing her will be very difficult. Heather has also been an outstanding science teacher, and similarly will be a challenge to replace. So once again, I want to wish all of our retirees a long, healthy in retirement, and hope that they will remember us and consider subbing in the future. So congratulations to our retirees on tonight's agenda.
Great. Thank you very much. And now for the mission moment, we have a guest speaker this evening. Tanya Harrison is here. She is representing the Women's Fund, which is an entity of the Oshkosh Area Community Foundation. And she'd like to tell you about a program that they've initiated called the SMART program.
Thank you guys for having me. Oh, it's
on.
good? Okay. So yes, again, thank you for having me, Tanya Harrison. I am a parent of 4 in the district, a community volunteer, and again, have been part of the Women's Fund for several years on a consultant basis and part of the Smart Social Task Force for the past 3-ish plus years as we've been building this campaign out. We'll take a quick question for all of you, a poll. Can anyone take a guess at how many minutes the average adult spends on their phone? You can round up to hours if you don't want to do minutes, but
In a day or a week?
in a day, yep.
3 hours.
3 hours?
Yeah, I'd say 4.
Okay.
6.
Good guess. It is approximately 400 minutes, so roughly 6 hours, 40 minutes. That number is higher for teens, so this was in one of the many studies that is kind of a staggering number. So what we're here to talk about tonight is not new or surprising, but is important nonetheless, and that is the impact of screens and social media on mental health. And the Smart Social Project was developed out of that need that we recognize for a while, but it's been in the works for quite some time. After a multi-year parenting initiative and post-COVID, the Women's Fund was hearing a lot of conversation around mental health, the mental health struggles in the community, so they dug in a little bit deeper by reaching out directly to mental health professionals in the community to ask them, what are you hearing? What are the struggles your patients are having? Who's having them? And maybe how or why or where can we infuse some attention and effort to making some impact in these areas. And the feedback really in a lot of these focus groups with these mental health professionals was overwhelming and scary, but also at the same time not super surprising. Anxiety, depression rose to the top for most of those mental health impacts that they were seeing across the board, and this was in strong correlation with screen use and social media. It wasn't the only component, but there was strong correlation between the two. And this was across all of their patients. This was teens, this was kids, this was adults, parents, this was across the board. And obviously phones and screens and social media are not going anywhere. So this campaign is not about eliminating those things. It is more about bringing awareness and intentionality to the use of the screens, and having that hopefully ensuring people are a little smarter, hence the name, with how and why and where they're using their screens. It isn't just about taking them away, because we know that's not the answer. One of the overwhelming messages we heard from the mental health professionals was the impact on brain health. So I'll get to that in a minute. Sorry, we're messed up in the order here, but this is a project timeline. So as I said, about 3 years ago, this is when this started with the research with the mental health professionals and with the focus groups. We've been meeting for several years and planning and developing this campaign, and it is now just launched this month. So we are at this point. So the mental health professionals, one of the biggest messages that they had for us was the impact on brain health. This was across all users, particularly in teens. Obviously, we know that brains are not fully developed until the age of 25-ish. So that was a big component and a big message that they reiterated to us. So in this research, we had initially intended this to be a kid and teen type of a campaign. We expanded it to include really adults just as much as teens, because we are on our phones clearly a lot as well, and we are models for the kids. So this expanded to all screen users really, because it was so important. And the brain health was so critical that we didn't feel like it was talked about enough, or there was enough like digestible information around that. So we really baked this into the foundation of a lot of the education of the campaign to bring more awareness around that component. I'm going to talk briefly about the framework of the brain part that the mental health professionals brought in as the most negative parts of the mental health impacts that people were seeing. The first was addictive behavior. And this is, the dopamine spikes and the streaks and the likes and just the addictive nature of apps and phones in general. That's not surprising. But this was a critical piece to the impacts that were seen in the anxiety and the depression that was coming out of the screen use. So that is a foundation of focus in the campaign. Misinformation. So this emotionally engaging content is very sticky. So it kind of interrupts those critical thinking skills when things are sensationalized, and we are all kind of probably familiar with that, or can have clickbait and have encountered a lot of this. So whether or not it's true or false doesn't really matter. Misinformation is a big piece of the mental unwellness that people experience and impacts the brain as well. Sleep deprivation, no surprise to anyone in this room or in education how impactful sleep deprivation is for students, but all people, and the impacts of screens from the blue lights to just the content that we're consuming really interrupts the circadian rhythm. So this is, again, a big component of the campaign that we'll touch on. The fourth part is social comparison, and this is something obviously we all are aware of and probably experience. Teens are particularly sensitive to this because their emotional centers are still developing, and that sense of self is still developing. And we all know the highlight reels. Everybody thinks everybody else's life is a 10, and it really is not. But this contributed a lot to the anxiety and depression that were resulting, that the mental health professionals were seeing. And finally, we're going to tackle the topic of cyberbullying. And this is a heavy topic, but one that deserves just as much attention, and that in the online cruelty that sort of exists and the layers of cyberbullying that are out there, particularly, again, sensitive to kids and teens because of their sensitivity to stress, and again, still that their developing brains are not quite capable of tackling that, and the stress hormones that, again, they're always in a state of threat. As we said, this will all apply to teens, but also to adults as well. Again, this is the project timeline. We are here. At this point, we're live. It is not surprising to anyone that could have predicted that this has really become a public health crisis. The mental health awareness and the screen and social media concerns, and where those intersect. As many of you probably want for yourselves, I know I do, and I certainly want for my kids to have healthier, better screen habits. The challenge is, where do we begin? Where do you start? Like, it's a big topic. It feels like a big ship to steer. And so the Smart Social campaign was developed around trying to help answer that question and help bring some guidelines to how to take some valuable steps. So SMART was born. And so all of these parts are really baked into the full part of the campaign as well, and it is centered around being self-aware. So having awareness around how you feel on your screens, what you're using, how you feel about it, and recognize some of the patterns that you may have. Mindfulness, and this is, again, being intentional with how and where and why we use our screens versus just the automatic scroll. And authenticity, important congruency between your online self, offline self, making sure those align. Responsibility, I know that this is important for everyone. I know little kids, when they first get Chromebooks or get online, they're talked about digital citizenship and the importance of there, and they sign some online contracts. But reinforcing the importance of responsibility across the board for teens and adults, I think, is we've recognized is extremely important, and making sure your online presence is being responsible. Truthful is a big part of this as well, that we seek and share information that it has integrity. So those critical thinking skills and reinforcing the need and importance of seeking and sharing truthful information. This is a brief overline of the budget. This really just is to show there is significant investment from the foundation, from community donors, that this is a topic and a concern that really has commitment from the community to address and to try to move some needles. Another timeline. So just last week we had a speaker, a professor from UW-Madison in. She is a pediatrician and the co-founder of the Center for Excellence Youth Social Media and Mental Health group. Big topic, but she's a national speaker, and she shared some really valuable information about really just changing the narrative more than anything about how the conversations that we have with our kids, that we have with ourselves around screens. So that was some valuable information that was all recorded, so we're going to share that out as well. And then really the community part of this project kicks off in February. And all of the campaign really centers, I talked about the brain pieces and those 5 areas on the left. Those are the focus areas of this campaign. And they all are going to include education, because education and awareness, the hope is when we know better, we can choose better. That's the hope. And 2, the other foundational part in all of these focus areas is resources and tools. So we're not feeling alone. We're all struggling a lot with this. No one's kind of alone in this struggles, but it can feel very isolating. So we want resources and tools wrapped around to support, and so people don't get lost in the process, because, as I said, it's overwhelming. And then outreach and experiences. This is probably the campaign's most unique and powerful portion, we feel. And this is really offering offline opportunities, encouraging offline opportunities out in the community for people to connect in real life, and kind of IRL moments that we all know exist. Like, everybody knows there's offline moments to go do things, but we don't often choose them. So there's some real community effort around this. And so in the month of February, we have a variety of unplug and play, unplug and connect opportunities around the community that are for all ages, and from pickleball at the YMCA, every Tuesday night, pickleball at the YMCA, Singo at the Gibson, there is line dancing at the library. We have a bunch of, they're all on our website, but that is a big push. Again, this is community-wide. There are things for adults, for kids, for families. Indoor obstacle course, inflatable obstacle course at the arena. So again, just providing opportunities for families to just take a little break from the screens. March is the misinformation focus, and there will be a Truth Quest activity out in this, and this is more about having some curiosity around misinformation and seeking some truth, and hopefully provide some education around some critical thinking skills and what that looks like. April is the sleep deprivation month, and that's really was because April 16th is National Pajama Day. So we thought this could be a fun community-wide pajama day that we'll be hosting, and then providing a lot of education around the importance of sleep, good sleep habits. May, social comparison, as I said, there's going to be a more to the story type of art installation that's going to be traveling around the community that is going to be engaging and thought-provoking. And we also are going to hopefully engage more of some student engagement within that month as well. And finally, the cyberbullying topic in June, we're going to close with that. A very heavy topic, but we are going to try to engage some levity in it a bit in making it more about some fun messaging around don't be a troll. There's going to be like a troll hunt. There's going to be a citywide movie night. Some more just education around the layers of cyberbullying and what that, it always doesn't look the same. So that's going to wrap up in June. Lots to see there. So again, this wasn't designed for schools. This was designed as a community-wide campaign. But as we developed it and as we had more conversations around the community, it recognized that really the schools were could get a lot of value out of what we were creating. And the measuring the impact. So we have a lot of metrics that are going to be tracked throughout this campaign. But these are just a few of them. And as you'll recognize some of the mascots, because we felt like, again, the school community really could get a lot of value out of what we had to share. We know this is a huge, like almost incomprehensible needle to move, but we really felt like we have a lot of energy around it because it is so hyper-local, and with the school district's interest in being involved, we as individuals can hopefully make small incremental changes, and if there are those around us who are doing the same, if it's promoted across the community, we're not going to feel so alone in that. So those small incremental changes can really help maybe move the needle a little bit and have a wider effect. And so really, I just want to recognize quickly too, this wouldn't have been possible without the instrumental help from the mental health professionals, and they really provided the framework for so much of what the foundation of this campaign. And the task force that we've worked for the last several years on all of the conversations and the developing and the refining of this, bring it to life, and then the investment of the donors that have been committed to this as well. And I hope everybody is ready to look up Oshkosh.
That's great. Thank you, Tanya.
Yeah,
Does
thank
anyone
you.
have any questions?
I have one, but it could be loaded. I don't mean it to be. The slide with the mascots, was a small part on the bottom, but that's sort of on things that it seemed to me like, what can the schools choose to do or individual teachers or students if they
Yep,
want to be
so
more
we
directly
actually just
involved?
presented to the administrators yesterday this presentation. We presented to the leadership at the district as a whole, so they're on board. So the administrators was like the next line of information in terms of like what would be applicable for their buildings or how to, again, this is a huge topic and we could very easily overwhelm staff, and that was not the goal. So at this point, we have so many tools and resources already and communications already created that for an easy on-ramp for schools is simply to share out with school families the resources and the tools and the opportunities that we have already created. So that is in the works, and making sure that just gets pushed out to families. In addition, there will be other opportunities. I know Oshkosh West, we are meeting with their PBIS, I think, that committee. I forget the name. But they reached out after the meeting yesterday, and they were very interested because they do have a cell phone kind of activity or something that they have done in years past. So they wanted to hear more about the campaign and how this could integrate into their program already. So I think it is more about the more we can share out to the individual schools. The communities program at North is also looking at taking on the social comparison theme for their junior projects, so that's going to be presented to them as an option. Again, the full campaign was too big of a bite for them to try to do anything as a whole, but that one theme, they can really take the core of that and build out some community outreach, build out some additional tools that can be used with maybe middle schoolers, so they're connecting that way with other students and utilizing their skills as well, because they're the audience, they're the ones that know better than we do on a lot of this. So those are some starting points, but yes, this is, and again, it wasn't initially designed for schools, but this is a great, we're thrilled to have the district on board in sharing the communications, so.
And I'm sure I'll text you about this, but this is a terrific project, and I will only text you with intentionality. And we'll try to respect their times when we write.
Yes.
Thank you, Tanya.
Yeah.
We can't wait to see the success of this project.
Very helpful.
Appreciate it.
Nice.
Superintendent's report.
Yes, so we'll welcome back the Spartan and Wildcat representatives back to the table after some semester exams and a holiday break. So a lot to get caught up on. So we'll start with things at Oshkosh North.
Hello. Yeah, there's been a little bit of a break with us being here, but we're happy to be back. And just a little update. What's been going on this winter? So a big thing is winter sports, and this is kind of an overview of everything that's been kind of happening. Boys and girls basketball, some wrestling, adaptive sports league, and boys swim and dive. We'll start out with the boys and girls basketball. Just last night, the girls were in Hortonville. Fortunately, we lost 34-77. But the boys were home, and we won 81-56 against Hortonville, so it kind of evened out. And then overall, the boys are going to be winning 9-4, and then the girls are unfortunately at a loss of 3-12. And then wrestling, they're wrestling against Kaukauna tomorrow. Recently, they went against Oshkosh West at the 20th annual Andrew Wallace Cup. Fortunately, we lost 30-40. But our overall score so far is a 35. And then Adaptive Sports League. Last night, the ASL hosted at Oshkosh North a floor hockey game against Appleton East High, and we won. And then boys swim and dive, they had a meet against Oshkosh, at Oshkosh West against Appleton North and East, and then they unfortunately lost 57-126. Their overall season currently is 0-5. But some good news is a senior is River Reeves broke a North Pool record last night with a score of 480 points, breaking the last score that was established in the 80s, which is a big accomplishment. And then I actually just came from practice for Hadestown. This is going to be the Oshkosh North musical, going to be happening at the Grand Opera House on February 12th through the 15th. Part of those days is Valentine's Day, so if anyone wants to spend a Valentine's night going to a high school musical production, you're more than welcome to. It's a, don't know if I shared the summary, but it's a Greek tragedy following Orpheus and Eurydice. It's very deep. I think it's a very good message that will be very interesting to come see. And then our North's very own Miss Marcon, a science teacher, got awarded 2025's Animal Learns Humane Science Educator of the Year, which is great. Just shows that not only our students like River are excelling, but also our teachers. And some upcoming North events are Hall of Fame and Academic Awards on February 5th in the ceremony. And a fun fact, our Hall of Fame person who's getting inducted at North this year is going to be Tyrese Halberton. So it'll be a great, inspiring ceremony to not only celebrate the accomplishments of students, but also of alumnus. And then our first annual 180-degree awards on February 5th are given to students who, from one semester to another, increase their GPA by at least a 0.75. So not only are we awarding our students who are excelling in academics, but also acknowledging the students who may have had a rough semester and brought it back up. And that's all that I have.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so what's going on with the Wildcats? We've had a busy couple of months. Starting off with our sports, our boys basketball team is currently has 6 losses and 9 wins. We're placed 6th overall in conference. Girls basketball is 7-9, 7th overall in conference. Girls wrestling is 1-1 for conference matches, and then overall they're 2nd, which is pretty cool. Boys wrestling is 4-4, they're 5th. Our hockey team just won another game, 7-10. Tomorrow the Adapted Sports League floor hockey team has a game at 4 p.m. against Appleton. So if you're looking to take a little drive for something to do, that's a great way to go support. And then our boys swim and dive team is 4-1, and they are placed second overall. So starting off early in December, our Key Club hosted a Santa book drive event. This was our first year running it, and as you can see by all the books we have laid out, it was a very successful event. It pretty much started with students collecting books throughout the school, and people were able to come drop them off. And then the whole idea was we hosted an event on Saturday in the O Room where anyone was allowed to come and browse through the books. They could take it free of charge, and then parents could also bring their children. We had a lot of different games and activities that kids could do, and of course they could come see Santa for free. So parents could take as many books as they want. We had well over 1,000 books. It was really a great event. And then in that photo, some of us dressed up, getting ready the day of events. We had a lot of elves running around, so it was pretty fun. And new that we have is our food pantry and take-home meals. So we just started this, and as you can see on the left, our Wildcat pantry got a little bit of an upgrade with some fun designs in the front. So this is available to any students at the end of the day for school, and they can take home some food for their families. Also in December, we had our holiday concert featuring the Oshkosh West Symphony and String Orchestras, along with all of the choirs and madrigals. It was a really great event. We do it every year, and always getting to see everyone perform is super fun, and just getting to do it is a great experience. Next up, we have our Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Essay Contest. We had 3 people awarded from West. We had William Amel, Osama Rafiq, and Michael Hodder. All of them were awarded. So just getting to see it, having 3 students awarded for that is pretty great, and we had a large number of students actually write essays. So that's just a great way to honor him and his works. Next up, we hosted our annual staff versus student basketball game. Unfortunately, the students did lose yet again, but it was a close one this year, so maybe next year. And then just this past weekend, our dance team competed in regionals. While they did not make it to state, down by 4 points, the girls said that they overall had a really great time, and just getting to do it was a great experience. And on the bottom you can see our seniors this year for their team. Next up, we had Rosa Ortiz Young. She placed gold at the Fox Valley Technical Skills Challenge for cooking and baking. It was really great. She is an amazing baker, so getting to see her move on to that is super great, as she'll get to go and do the state competition against others from all around the state. So that'll be super cool to look forward to. Next up, our strength students got to take a trip to the Badger game, and they just learned a lot about different ways that they can be going into their futures, that they can help support athletes if they're looking for a career, any type of athletics, and got to do a whole day of that and then also get to watch the game. Along with that, we had our Athletic Hall of Fame honored, so we have a lot of new people this year, which is super fun. And then coming up, our Key Club is also hosting a bubbler sale, so it's kind of, the idea is semester strong, and you'll be able to purchase a coupon for your friend and have them delivered with some sort of positive message. And then any type of friend or whoever receives the coupon can go redeem that at the cafe, just for kind of a pick-me-up as we're getting into our final semester. And then this past weekend, we also hosted Oklahoma. It was really great. Our students worked very hard for it, so there's just some photos. That's our pit for it. And then another one. It was really great, and seeing all of them work so hard up for preparation, and they really pulled it off, even though they did have to miss out on a night because of our freezing day. But it was a really great production, and all of them were super proud. And then for some future dates, we started a food tasting panel that we'll be hosting on February 4th for our new food going forward, and just getting to try all the stuff that our cafeteria is hoping to bring in. Our student council is hosting a blood drive February 20th. We're hoping to get some good numbers again like our last one. And then we have Snow Blast on February 9th through 14th, and then that dance on Valentine's Day. And then next up, later in March, we are hosting an ASL game during the day with a winter pep rally. And that's it.
Marvelous.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Very nice.
Thank you both so much. All right, and next we'll go into the Superintendent Good News Report. So, as you heard, a lot of great things going on at the high schools and certainly across the district. So, we'll start with Emmeline Cook, third through fifth graders, recently welcomed local Fox Valley author Kelly Nelson for an engaging presentation of her children's books, both of which are about families that live in Wisconsin. Students explored the writing process and asked great questions about being an author and how to get a book published. So thank you for Kelly for coming in for that. Reed Elementary is proud to announce a $30,000 Cummins Community Development Grant, marking the second consecutive year of this funding. The grant provides students with vital life experience field trips that build essential background knowledge for classroom success. Beyond experiences, Cummins is fostering school spirit and literacy by providing every student with a branded Reed Rocket shirt and water bottle, as well as supporting the One School, One Book initiative. So thank you so much for Cummins and being a great partner. As was mentioned earlier, but also want to lift up, just really proud of Mrs. Stacy Frankenstein Markin, who was the 2025 National Humane Science Educator of the Year by Animal Learn. As one of only 7 educators recognized nationwide, Stacy was celebrated with her heart-first approach to science and her leadership using modern instructional technologies. So this honor highlights the innovative and world-class instruction taking place in the Oshkosh North Science Department. So congratulations to Stacy on that, well-deserved. Second graders at Roosevelt Elementary recently transformed into I knew I was going to mess this up, entomologists, researching and presenting informative posters on various insects. These students demonstrated mastery of complex biology concepts, and by comparing social and solitary insects, students sharpened their analytical skills before performing their findings to their peers. This project-based learning blended scientific inquiry with public speaking, leaving the entire second grade buzzing, thank you, with new knowledge. So well done to all the students involved in that project. Congratulations to the West Music Department on a spectacular run of Oklahoma. The production showcased incredible vocal talent, choreography, and dedication, leaving audiences in the appreciation of the arts. Just so proud of the students in the cast, crew, pit orchestra, and everybody else supporting the performance for delivering the high-energy experience for our whole community to enjoy. So well done. North students in the Communities program recently completed their Bridging Generations project, fostering connections between students and local senior citizens. I had the opportunity to serve as a moderator along with Dr. Herzog and other community leaders. The project centered on table discussions that turned personal stories into powerful learning moments. To conclude the experience, students practiced intentional gratitude by writing personalized cards to their senior buddies and their host facilities. So it was a great opportunity to be out and about. The collaboration between Oshkosh Corp and Val Phillips Middle School MELT program is continuing to impact students. Under the mentorship of Oshkosh Corp, volunteers and students under the mentorship of the Oshkosh Corp volunteers, students mastered the precision of soldering electrical components and building functional flashlights while exploring the software used for custom laser engraving. By practicing the specialized skills alongside industry professionals, students are gaining that early exposure to high-demand careers and technology and engineering. So thank you so much for Oshkosh Corp and all the volunteers that took time away. Excited to just honor the district's second annual MLK Days celebration, centered on the theme "True Peace is an active pursuit." Over 200 attendees gathered to hear powerful student-led reflections, including moving essays, speeches, and artistic performances that honored Dr. King's legacy. By taking the lead in the program, our students demonstrated how they are actively living the values of justice and hope in our daily lives. And just a quick shout out to Anthony Miller for his coordination on a great event there. So Anthony, thank you for your leadership on that. Also excited to announce that Michael Trudell, who is at West High School, was recently named the winner of the Milwaukee Brewers MLK Day Community Service Contest. As president of the Black Student Union at Oshkosh West, Micah has been the driving force for positive change, transforming student feedback into actionable policy improvements. His dedication has led to a more inclusive curricula and stronger sense of belonging within the school community at West. So congratulations to Micah. Our district is also proud to be a founding member of the Read More Oshkosh movement, a community-wide literacy campaign that officially launched last week, led by a team of Leadership Oshkosh alumni, including our own Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Sam Coleman. The initiative aims to foster a culture of reading that extends from the classrooms into homes, neighborhoods, and local businesses. By aligning schools with city partners, the campaign ensures that literacy remains a cornerstone of educational success and community well-being for all of our residents. So thank you, Sam, for that initiative and all the work behind the scenes on that. Also had the honor of presenting last week at the State Education Convention alongside Dr. Coleman, Mr. Miller, and board member Molly Schmeltnick, sharing the district's journey towards literacy and justice for all. We were encouraged by the high level of engagement from leaders across the state who joined in our conversation on why we must involve community partners to increase literacy outcomes. By centering on equity, grade level rigor, and science of reading, we're ensuring every child in our community is community, college, and career ready. And finally, just a list of opportunities I've had to be out both in the community and our schools over the last couple of weeks. So thank you for that. And that concludes the Superintendent's Good News Report for tonight.
Thank you. It's been busy. Very busy. District Administrator Supplemental Reports. The verbal report from December 10th, 2025, Board Listening Session. Dr. Coleman.
Thank you, Madam President. There were 16 speakers who attended the December 10th school board listening session. The majority of those speakers all provided feedback pertaining to proposed budget reductions. Those speakers included staff members, community members, and students. We are thankful for their input and certainly appreciate their advocacy, and want to just remind folks that these listening sessions are useful and meaningful as they inform decisions. And certainly this feedback that we received on December 10th is an example of that. That feedback was taken back by administration and processed through with the board members, and we were able to come back with budget reductions that certainly, while difficult, reflected responsiveness to that feedback. Next, I will provide an overview of the January 14th board listening session. There were 8 speakers who attended that session. Again, there were community members, staff members, and one parent. The majority of that feedback pertained to, again, proposed budget reductions, specifically pertaining to our library and media specialists. And then we had another parent who provided feedback and had some questions about student safety and our processes for addressing incidents that require resolution or restorative practices. And that is it for my summary.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sam.
Thanks, Sam.
And next we have Mr. Yerke with a referendum update.
Good evening, Board. Happy last week of January. A brief update on referendum projects. We obviously have a lot of things going on. At the moment, it's a lot of smaller projects and pieces. We currently have 4 projects out to bid. Those 4 projects include the Franklin project, Oakwood project, the E-Cook window project, and the air conditioning projects at multiple locations. All those are currently out to bid. We are hopeful for a competitive bidding season. All those bids will be in around mid-February. We had a series of user group meetings for the new middle school on January 20th. Groups came in and met with Bray and Associates and our design team to go over the preliminary plans of the new middle school. Obviously, that can be an exciting time. It can also be a pretty overwhelming time the first time those user groups see those plans. Obviously, we take their feedback. They can go process with their teams, individually meet with us, and then we have additional core process planning meetings with them to take their feedback, continue to modify our plans. Again, we know that the first time they see those plans, can certainly be exciting for them, a new facility, a new build. There's also a lot of questions and a lot of explaining on our end on the engineering process, the processes we use to go through the design piece. Carl Traeger Elementary School leadership team is currently working with the Oshkosh Rec Department to design their new playground. Again, that will be similar to the other new playgrounds we put in from a design process. We want to have a standard in our district that we follow, so we have some continuity across buildings. Some small scale but important projects that are just finishing up at Franklin and Oakwood. Things like interior signage design has been complete. Interior room numbering. You wouldn't think those would be big projects, but when you have older buildings with numbers, letters, and trying to match up new construction to appropriate lettering and numbering when it comes to safety and identification, that's a much bigger process than it should be. Camera locations is another piece. Anytime we're adding square footage onto our buildings, we're re-looking at our camera locations to make sure all of our buildings have a safe, secure spot for surveillance. And again, we're trying to build a standard process for all OASD buildings. So when we do have new construction, when we evaluate our safety, we have a standard in place for security cameras. Super exciting if you want to spend some time with furniture group meetings, looking at chairs and stools and table heights. And believe it or not, that stuff matters a lot when you're talking about a kindergartner to a fifth grader. Table heights and shapes and square footage of rooms. And then the phasing plan for those buildings are complete. The phasing plan could possibly be the most complicated piece to the build, knowing that construction is taking place while kids are in the building. So moving classrooms, changing playground spaces, accommodating all of those moves while keeping teachers sane and construction crews moving is an important piece. So any questions on the referendum update?
Just a comment. Carl Traeger Elementary School is going to be having an addition, and at the same time, they're working with the Recreation Department to design the new playground. So obviously, there are a lot of moving parts over there to coordinate and make sure that students are safe during all this construction going on. So I appreciate the timeliness of this report and also the concern for overall safety and the well-being of the students and the staff throughout construction. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. We've had numerous plans, and Jim Fox does a tremendous job of coordinating with the engineer team, the building team, safety aspects. So we have fencing. We make sure we have all the controls in place so kids in construction don't intermingle. Same for our families who are either picking up, dropping off, or at our buildings.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Brian.
Mr. Nehan's budget variance report.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm going to do something a little bit different with the budget variance report than what we've done for a while. It's been a little while since I've walked through more of the report with a little bit more of an explanation of what the pages are, how I would really look at them and use them. It's been a little while since we've done that, so I think now is a good time, especially with some variability between last month and this month with where outlooks are. So the first page of your report is going to be prior year actuals against this year's actuals. So the first two columns are actual that would be from last year from this time of the report. The second column is the total year for last year. And then as we move further right on the columns, you'll see this year's actual to this year's budget, and then the corresponding percentages. So this is a valuable report in that it tells us how we are performing compared to last year as a benchmark. What I don't like about this report is it benchmarks against last year. And for us, last year was a bad year. So whether or not it's a bad year or a good year, you're only getting a one-year look, and you always have to be cognizant of that. So this is a good report to look, and this is where I would start. As a board member, I would really compare that first column, the total expenses year-to-date from last year, against total year expenses to date this year. So we're $500,000 less than last year, actual dollars spent during the same period. You can see if you look at the percentage of the budget, we're 1% less than where we were at the same time period last year. So the good part about that is 1% in our budget's a little bit more than $1.5 million. So that's not a small number when we're doing better. Again, that's part of the story and part of what I want you to be looking at when you get these reports. So I'm going to skip the second page of your report because that's the revenues, a breakdown of revenues. It's a little bit easier to go through the expenses because the expenses are more what we're going to probably be concentrating on. The format is exactly the same. So it would be the same as going through the second page as what you do going through the third page. So the third page just gives you nice graphs of where we are prior year to current year with the different categories. I would really concentrate more on the right side of the page. The little speedometers tells you percentages of year-to-date compared to budget for 4 different categories. Those are good to look at. And then just because I'm also partial to liking numbers, I like the graph right below it or the chart right below it of these are the top 10 expenses that we have year-to-date in the district. So the district has spent the most year-to-date on teacher salaries. Makes sense since they're our biggest group and we know salaries are the biggest part of our budget. You will start seeing fluctuation, especially from early in the year to later in the year. Those top 10, there'll be some consistencies, but you will see some fluctuations within those. And then the next page I would look at is really the page 5, where you're really looking at what would really be the next part of page 1. So page 1 is we're looking at current year compared to prior year. This page is where we start getting the variability and some of the frustration, I think, with the reports on this is how it seems like we're changing a lot month over month, or 2 months ago we were seeing one thing and now it's something different. If you look at the third column is adding in projections. These are based on a 5-year trend. As we look at every single line item we have in the district, I've got 2 different software packages that help me. I load all the information in and they help me get trends. They help me break that down into this is what a monthly budget would look like based off of those trends and that percentage of budget spend. All of those get calculated into how we have remaining projections based on that. So depending on how we've spent year to date is going to have, in some cases, a pretty dramatic shift on what my remaining projections are. So it wouldn't be uncommon to see a 1 to 3% variance within month to month from our remaining projections. And again, if you're looking at a budget our size, 1 to 3% variance can be anywhere from $1 million up to $3 or $4 million, depending on where spending has landed. So I like to live more in this because I'm more analytical and I like to look more, analyze things more from the future perspective. That's where I'm most comfortable. Also understanding as I'm on different boards in the community and nonprofits, in that role, I'm probably living more in that first worksheet. because I'm really more just interested in what are we doing now. Right now, we're trending 1% below last year. Actual compared to our budget, we're about $1 million over. So less than 1% variance at that point. Are there any questions with that or anything in the report?
I do have a question. Could you give me an example or two, or give us an example or two of non-capital objects? What might be in that category?
Yeah, non-capital objects. So a capital object is anything over $5,000.
Okay.
So any of our paper, any office supplies, desks, quite a bit of what we buy comes in non-capital.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yep.
I just want to clarify that I'm probably the one who's responsible for us having this exercise tonight, because I was like, I would like to know better what I should be looking at on the dashboards and what it actually means. And when we become concerned, when we have variation on a given, line item or things like that, to make it clear to the community what Drew was going through, it is available on the website as well. It's the hyperlink in the agenda. That is the link for operating funds, is what he was working through. And it does provide good, useful information, especially when you can have a translator here to help understand what it means.
I think the other thing that I'd like to lift up in addition to that is, and we'll have a conversation about this a little bit later with our new KPIs, and then a further conversation in a couple months. But one of the things we're proposing is looking at a KPI related to operational areas and expenses, and having that be more of a focus in the performance of the system. So that'll also be another area we'll be able to lift up and then get board impact into exactly what we're looking for, in that key performance area from a system health standpoint. So that'll be another, again, value add that we'll have in addition to like what Drew had talked about tonight. But it'll give us some time to be able to just flush this out also and improve information.
So if I look at that page 5, can I be looking at the estimated current year totals, revenues versus expenses, and it looks like there's a projected deficit of roughly $2 million. That's kind of where you're thinking we're coming in this year if all the projections pan out the way that you want?
Yeah, if the rest of the year more closely follows trend, yes. But there's going to be, again, especially for us being our self-funded plan, insurance plan, that's a huge variable on how to predict that. But yes, if we trend like we have, that would be where I would expect us.
And help me to put that into context of, we just went through the budget reduction process, and part of that, we were choosing to put 1.5 million back in next year, right? That part of the budget reduction, we had all these additional expenses. I think there was a 3% for staff raises. I think it was 1.5 million we were looking to throw back in. Does this now mean, even after we do that, we're going to be $500,000 less than where we were at before? Is that what we're saying? If this all projects it out?
Correct. That would be.
After the 1.5 million, if we put the, okay.
Correct.
And Drew, is that consistent with the forecast we got from Baird, the third party? I mean, it just looks like it.
Is my...
Yeah, just
this projection?
The fact that we're continuing to see our fund balance go down. And I guess you can confirm, too, when we're at $2 million in structural deficit, we're using fund balance to close that gap.
Correct.
Correct.
Yes, and at this time, this isn't a surprise as far as that goes. We have had a salary and benefit concern and issue since I've been in the district, and being able to have a budget where you can actually, ideally, from my seat, I'd be able to have a budget where I've got a 1% to 2% cushion within the overall budget to be able to allow for variances within my staffing plan when we have to have staffing get added during year that weren't necessarily part of the overall budget, or to make sure that we have enough cushion within the health plan where if you're exceeding, you have cushion. We've not been in a cushion. We've actually been on the other side of that, is to present balanced budgets. I'm reducing my health plan budget by $500,000 or $1 million. I'm reducing, we haven't put an increase in student transportation for 3 years, and we've got a, by contract, 3% inflationary increase. So we know those items are gonna run over budget. That's the way it's gonna be if we're presenting and wanting to pass balanced budgets. So the work we've done through this last few months and getting the work within the budget reduction process, that's a large step to right-sizing a lot of that we've been struggling with the last 5 years plus. So that's going to go a long ways to getting in a much better place where there's ability to start getting cushions in and start being able to be having that built into the budget. So as you're looking now, there'd be a much different monthly report. Unfortunately, that's not where we're sitting right now, and that's what everything would be telling us. The reason with the forecasting, I use 2 forecasting.
Yeah.
One gets down to closer to like the actual dollar. It's a lot of work, but it gets me closer to $1. And then I use the Baird system, which gives me a wide range on a target. So it'll give me a target, and then it gives me about a 4% variance either way to go within that range as a normal range. So I try to use both of them to double check on where I am, because if you just look at the Baird, it'll give me, and it might give me a final number of my target for expenses is 160 million, but it'll say you could go up to 172, or you could be as low as 144. Well, that to me is too big of a range for me to come and say, well, this is a pretty big range to get it. So I use the other tool to get to what I'm comfortable with an amount, and then I verify it with Baird's tool of where am I compared to their target. And if it is reasonably close, then I get more comfortable with that.
Okay. Go ahead.
Can you put this into context of, I believe, the future year then, that we projected out 26, 27, we passed $5.5 million budget reduction. Then I think we were saying that following year, we were anticipating a $2 million something like that.
A lot of variables to that, but yeah, but the idea is that there'll be a reduction.
Something.
Yeah.
But so now this would be saying that if we wanted to get to that same point, we would have to add more to fund balance. That's something we're going to have to deal with. So it could be, we could be dealing with a larger than what we were thinking before if we want to get fund balance up to our proposed 12%.
Correct.
That we're shooting for. Okay.
Correct.
Yep.
Unfortunately, this is, again, the nice thing with, the really positive from the tough process that just happened is after all the reductions are actually done and solidified, my office is going to be able to hopefully be in a place that it hasn't been in a very long time, of being able to have a budget that at least gets me more realistically where like all my other, I might not have a bunch of cushion, but I'm realistically budgeting where we think expenses are going to be, plus $1.5 million cushion with that planned fund balance transfer. So that's not been a place we've been. So that'll be a good thing. Structurally, the way the state biennium has been made, and unless they change something in the next biennium, this district has somewhere between a 2.2 and a 2.5 million structural deficit every year from the way the state funds us. So every year, you're going to go into every budget with a 2.25 to 2.5 structural reduction to get the balance. And then if you need fund balance add on top of that, you'll have to work that in as well.
So again, I think an important part of our work, in the next 6 to 9 months as we're preparing for another budget cycle is to really dig down into that operational expenses, identify that as a KPI, and then be able to make, what our plan is moving forward. That'll help inform our process as we go through, not only next year, but as we had said, it'll be, 2 to 3 years worth of budget cycles to be able to get ourselves to where we need to be. What the key performance indicator will do is give us a clean path to that and have just better transparency from a community standpoint and communications from a staff standpoint as we go into the budget processes. So that'll be something that we'll, work together to be able to build out from a board standpoint, because it's really important as a board member, understanding what those metrics are, what exactly to look for, and be able to have a definitive plan as we're moving forward with that.
If the state came through with increased funding for special ed, what is that bottom line of what you think is a realistic percentage that they would increase it to, and what would that do to our bottom line?
If they actually truly funded what they said they were going to fund,
which is the 42%?
Yeah, if right now the reduction from 42 to realistically we're going to be 38 to 39-ish %, somewhere in that range. I believe that's somewhere in the neighborhood of $600,000 to $700,000 for us. Again, the bigger jump's going to be the next year when we go. Right now, I've got 40% built in for reimbursement when it's supposed to be 45. Again, it's a some certain amount of money.
Right.
So if there's not enough money in the pot to give us more than 38% this year, the amount of money they're adding into it's minimal for what they're going to add to the pot. So we'll be lucky to get 40%. If we went from 40% to 45%, you'd be looking closer to $1.5 million, $2 million impact for the district, but I've not seen or heard any signs that that's going to be realistic. Now, I know they are talking again and reopening to some kind of a tax break, and that's one of the things the governor's talked about, but that's something Madison has to figure out.
So what I'm hearing, and I'm sorry, I'm probably being blunt and repetitive, but I think we have to keep hammering this message home so people don't feel surprised again that we're going to have another 2 to 3 years of right sizing. That's probably going to continue to have to occur. When I say right sizing, that probably means budget reductions. I don't know what else that could be interpreted as. And also, we need to get to a place as a board, as a district, where we're budgeting based on what we think is going to happen, not what we hope is going to happen, because that's how we keep getting into the structural deficit mess.
I also hope, though, too, that we have better trust and understanding from admin and things so that the board is really clear if we are balancing a budget that's not really a balanced budget. I don't think that we necessarily had full understanding of, well, we're saying that this is a balanced budget, but we know that we're not getting, we're not increasing our funding for busing, but it was a 3% required contract increase. We have to have that understanding and really blunt honesty from admin, because the board can't because I had no, I could very easily be missing stuff, so we just need to be at a point where we're sharing the real, true numbers as to why we are not at the balanced budget as well. And that's nobody's fault, it's just we have to share the information to understand why, and we can't say it's a balanced budget when it's not.
No, I agree. You can balance a budget with your credit card, but that's not long-term viable. We need to balance it in a way that's not going to create a structural problem.
Any other questions for Mr. Nehans?
I do. Under major points, I'm concerned about the number of funds that are projected to be over budget. You explained the student transportation one, but there's an item on there for technology and software projecting to be over budget by $300,000, the non-capital technology by $250,000. The health plan, we don't have a lot of control over that, but in another part of your report, you noted that I believe we were up 3%, whereas other districts are up 12%, and that's fairly common for health insurance to be up. But I'm concerned about the number of categories we have that are up by thousands of dollars, and when you add those together, we're well over $1 million. And then your last point under major points, the Fund 80 having increased expenses, and that's putting the district in a position to utilize the fund balance when we were already dipping into fund balance last year and putting us under the amount that we had in the policy. I'm really concerned about wearing that fund balance down and what that means for us short and long term.
Yeah, just to clarify.
Okay.
Fund 80, the rec department,
Yes.
has its own separate segregated fund balance.
All right.
We need to spend some of that money down. We did present
okay.
that intentionally at a $400,000 deficit.
Mm-hmm.
DPI starts frowning upon carrying, I mean, we've got close to a $2 million surplus in that fund.
Okay.
It's got a $5 million operating budget, so that's a pretty high fund balance for an account. So we do
I
need
see.
to be intentional on getting that to a little bit more realistic level.
Okay.
Which is what we're doing. This was part of the, again, part of this was the timing of the playgrounds that we
Sure.
remade, but also part of the trying to be good tax stewards of, we've got a fairly sizable fund balance there. We need to balance that a little bit better
Okay.
and make sure that we're not, even coming back balanced in that fund at this point. I think we need to look at continuing to look at what we're taxing the taxpayers for that until we get closer to that $1 million surplus amount,
Okay.
rather than where we are with that.
Thank you. So we probably need a little clarification then, moving forward. You're saying, if I understood you correctly, Fund 80 has its own fund balance, which is separate from the rest. So
does Fund 50.
Okay.
Those are completely segregated funds that
Okay.
don't commingle. The only time we would commingle Fund 10 with Fund 50 is if Fund 50 didn't have any surplus and we and we needed extra money, then by law we have to make it whole, like Fund 27.
Okay.
Otherwise, it sits as its own segregated fund as
Okay,
well.
we should probably clarify that then
Okay.
in future reports to the board so that everyone understands
Sure.
that there are different fund balances and it's not the one that was subject to the board policy.
Sure. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Can I follow up on Barb's first part of the question? Like things with technology software and non-capital technology, both projecting over to be about $500,000. Is there anything that can be done to stop discretionary spending in those to get them closer to be on budget or not?
Most of that isn't discretionary. And as I went through, and again, this is part of the forecasting and part of that variability. As I looked more specifically into, as we were getting questions over the weekend, what it appears is happening with the technology and the forecasting is the 360 object, that technology software object, looks like we just spent a large, on the contracts, spent that money, expensed it 2 months prior this year than we did in the past. Right now, it is on budget. There's $150,000 left in those budgets of actual spendable money. I just think as we look into where the system's forecasting a deficit for that is because in February of the trend, we had high spend. In this year, actual, looks like we had that high spend in December.
Okay. So the software is telling us that it's projecting, humans don't agree.
Correct.
Okay.
And we'll check on, right? I mean,
Yeah, I mean-
that's part of our monitoring
Yes.
as we go.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thanks, Drew.
Very
Thank you.
informative. And next we have Mr. Yerke, workers' compensation mod rate.
I feel like I was just here talking mod rate with all of you. I think that was my first report. I did. I have better news on this mod report. I'll go through it pretty high level considering we just went through the specifics of what mod rate is and how the calculations are figured. We are going to be at a 1.43 next year, so our mod rate will be 1.43. The industry average is a 1. What that means is next year we will pay approximately $116,000 more for our premium rate. Avoiding lost time claims is a key. That's one of our key communications. If we can get people back to work within 3 days, those claims are reduced by 70%. So you'll see when I talk about action steps at the end, one of our key measures is to get people back to work and educate our staff on the importance of returning to work. And our total incurred losses for 2025 so far are below expected. So we're in a good spot, relatively speaking, at the moment. Again, for those watching at home who don't know what mod rate is, the state gives us a rate. We actually get 2 rates. We get a teacher rate that's calculated, and then we have a rate for food service and buildings and grounds. Obviously a little more dangerous, so the rates are different. We take that, our payroll divided by 100 times our mod rate based on 3 years of claims, and that gets you your premium cost of insurance. Current year, 25-26, you can see our current mod is a 127,559 is what we pay for our premium rate. If the 0.43, that's the lowest. If we would have 3 years of 0 claims, that's what we would pay. The controllable on the right is the extra pay we are having to kick in based on our workers' comp claims. Okay? And on the far left, that's the industry average if we were at a 1.0. Projection for 26-27, knowing we're going to have a 1.43 mod rate. You can see the important number is the controllable on the right. That is extra what we are paying above and beyond. If we were to have 3 years of 0 claims, we would be paying the $198,000 and change. Okay, so 26-27, our premium rates will be up, and that's based on 3 years. Here's the relative good news. So if you look at 2025, that I think it's a red line in the middle. The expected losses is what we're expected on a year-to-year basis. We're currently under that at 114,000. Now I'm going to show you a slide coming up that'll contradict that a little, but I'll explain that. The kicker here is the 2024 year. That year is going to stay with us for 3 years. That is going to be the reason why we're going to sit in the 143 range for a while, and we're not going to be able to get to that one until we get 2024 off our books. So when we do look at next year's claims, they always skip the year that just finished. And the reason for that, you might have a long-term claim. Somebody broke a hip and that claim doesn't finish in that calendar year or that school year, and it carries into the next year. So they don't, 2025 will not be a part of our calculation until another year. So 2024, 23, and 22 are what makes up the 143 mod rate going forward. But we are currently under. This again is going to contradict because we just had some costing come in where we're at a 165, which still puts us under. We're still in a much better spot when you consider where we were a year ago. We are considerably better both in number of claims and cost of claims. So our total claim count for 24-25, or excuse me, 25-26, looking at 129, 89 of those were no cost. Those were just notices. I slipped and fell. I want to report the injury in case something comes up. There's no cost. I didn't need to go to the doctor. There's no reoccurring. So 89 of those were notice only. Our top 5 of frequency and severity, we've talked about combative students. That is our number 1. So that's a 20 on the top. Then you can see right now that's a costing of about $71,000. I think an interesting piece to this is our highest number is K-3. So kindergartners, first grade, second grade, and third grade. It's not typically high schoolers or middle schoolers. It's our littles who dysregulated, biting, scratching, poking, those types of things. So when we look at our high number, if we were to go through all the data, elementary is our highest group there. I know it's weird to say you get excited about mod rate and workers' comp, but I think we've made some strides recently with our action steps in addressing it. So certain things we have done, we've had our insurance come in and do a hazard study. We brought them into 5 of our buildings as a sample site. They look at everything up and down, top to bottom, and give us a listing of hazards to fix with our buildings and address. We then do that same hazard study in our other buildings in our district. So those findings get shared with me, a group of administrators, and then they share it throughout their building, and our custodial and maintenance and facilities go through and address all of those issues. We resubmit to R&R. We also had R&R come in and present to all of our principals. And they will tell you education is the key in the workforce to preventing injuries. When you can discuss it on a regular basis, make it a priority in your building, and everybody understands the impact on our financial stability, what our premiums are gonna look like, and ultimately we want people safe at work. We want them to come to work safe, we want them to go home safe. That is our #1 priority. It's not saving money, that's an added bonus, but if we can keep our teachers happy and healthy at work and save ourselves money in the process, that's a bonus. Just a success story. We had a case where we had a workers' comp claim that repetitive situation in a building, and it was happening and happening and happening. And Director Skifstad did a great thing and brought in an outside resource to provide additional training, and we have saw a drastic reduction in workers' comp claims in that classroom. So when we identify a need, a repetitive situation or a high claims, we're addressing that as a team, putting an action plan in place, and we've seen positive results in that. And our numbers show that right now. And then district does exploring changes to legacy practices, policy, procedure. Girls, when you showed me the staff basketball student game, I passed out over there a little bit. Those are some of the things that just discussion points within our district. Our 5 highest claims over the last 5 years are staff injuries participating in school events. And those are super high claims that end up in that. So those are
Don't tackle your teachers.
Yeah, so we knew those were going on, so it's not just on you guys, but.
You didn't hurt anybody, did you?
But
So those are just discussions we continue to have with our principals and our staff to educate and make good decisions about what we're doing in our buildings so we have safe employees that can be in front of our kids working every day. Any questions on Bobby and where we currently are at?
Thank you, Mr. Yerke. You and I had a chance to talk about a couple of my questions on this the other day. So I don't know if I have a question now or more of a comment. I guess I do have a question in that you noted that a lot of these claims result from combative students. What are we doing to educate, train our staff, change those student behaviors so that students are not injuring our staff members?
Yeah, there's a number of things, and it starts with, #1, our principals being aware, and then our leadership being aware, our team being aware of what's taking place. So getting teachers to, #1, report in a timely manner. Get hurt, go to the office, fill out the paperwork, and then sit down with your administrator, your principal, and that team, and go through the details of what happened. Our teachers are warriors. They want to get back in the classroom. They don't want to miss time. So it's, hey, this happened, let me get back to work. We need them to sit down with us, go through exactly what happened so we can process, we can analyze what's taking place in a room, and then we can put the appropriate resources and training in place, whether it's nonviolent training, coming back in, conscious discipline, having an outside resource come in and work with staff. It's educating them. Ultimately, if we have repetitive instances with kids, it's do we have to move somebody somewhere? Do we have to take that teacher out of that room, put them in a different spot, and try somebody else? We don't want to move kids, but is there a point in time where we have to look at relocating a kid? Yeah, I think there is a point when that is a necessary discussion to have. So there are a lot of things that it's case by case dependent. Ultimately, educating our staff on the right way to do business, the right way to report, and then being accountable to what's taking place. If we have a teacher wearing sandals every day and they continue to have foot injuries by getting stomped on, that's an issue we have to address. So it's analyzing all the data, looking at our reports, having teachers be comfortable reporting those things, and addressing it 15 different ways.
You've largely talked here about teachers, but we've heard in the past about paraprofessionals who have been concerned about combative students and injuries that have resulted to them. Would that same training that you just described?
I lump them all together.
Okay.
And the majority are paraprofessionals when we look at the data, but they're teachers. Like, they're in that classroom, they're teaching kids, they're working with kids, so I lump them all together in that discussion.
I'm very concerned about this sort of thing because, like you said, safety is our #1 priority. And if people are anticipating coming to work and being injured in some way, that's something we have to deal with. And we have invested in this district in a lot of training, whether it's conflict resolution or it's PBIS or it's nonviolent crisis intervention. I just want to see those numbers go down on those injuries to our staff members. That's something that we should be able to get a handle on. And I'm not blaming you or anybody else. I'm just saying.
I don't think anybody would disagree with
No,
that.
and to me, it's more than the dollars. It's about the pain and the suffering and the anticipation going into work. Am I going to get spit on today? Am I going to get stomped on today? And how can I avoid that and help these students learn? And then if you get someone injured and we bring in a substitute who may not have the universal substitute teacher license, but they're not specific, they don't have the regular license for that grade level, and that person might be in there for multiple days, the students miss out on the quality instruction of a regular classroom teacher. So to me, those are all variables that impact student learning, and I appreciate the efforts you and the rest of the individuals in this room and the principals are making to reduce those numbers of combative student-related injuries. Thank you.
Agree 100%, and that's a statewide conversation right now. Because
Thank
if you talk to counterparts across the state, especially younger grades are on fire. That is where you see just unregulated students at a high level.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
I just want to make a comment. I think the last time you presented, I was a little frustrated by the fact that the mod rate was over 3 years, and I think I asked for more detail. And I don't know exactly what happened this time. Either you provided more data, or you explained it better, or quite possibly I just finally understood it. And so I feel much better about understanding what's going on. I appreciate your responsiveness to the request, so thank you.
You're welcome, I appreciate it.
Thanks, Brian.
Good, thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Schmidt's cybersecurity update.
All right, good evening, everybody. This should be pretty brief. Our district is in our 6th year of active cybersecurity practices, which means that we're very mature as far as the way that we handle things. So if you look at the statistics in the report, we're well within our 5-star rating for cybersecurity. Our phishing rate is incredibly low. Our training completion rate is incredibly high. And I also just want to highlight our cybersecurity specialist, Ike Cole. He goes by Ike. We call him Isaac. You can call him whatever. But he just obtained his CISA Plus cybersecurity associate. It's an industry standard, really rigorous certification for him to study for and to obtain. So we have a very highly qualified individual who's in there. And the biggest thing with that is like you'll notice that we don't have incidents and we don't have things that are happening. It gets isolated to a specific spot, and Ike is really good about being very proactive about keeping our network and our systems safe. So kudos to him for the work that he's put into doing that. He's doing a great job, and our staff and our students are also doing a really good job of reporting things that sound suspicious or helping us to identify any of those holes that they see. So another thing I probably should just point out really quick. We did, so with the budget reductions, we were planning a $450,000 reduction to the technology budget. Part of that was a planned decrease in our some subscriptions to some software that we use within our cybersecurity program that was planned prior. So we're right-sizing that software and making sure that we're using our resources effectively. So while we are decreasing spending in that area, we're not reducing the amount of protection that we're providing to the district.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris.
And Mr. Nehan's audit.
Okay. Every year, the K-12 districts are required by law to have an independent audit. So we just had our audit. This is on our KPI. So we were a 5-star on the KPI, which is 1 or fewer findings. The only finding the Oshkosh School District gets is one that the vast majority of school districts get in the state, and that is that we don't prepare all of our financial statements internally ourselves. So that 100 and some page document of financial statements, we rely and contract our auditor to do it with information and numbers that we supply them. I do want to make sure that Kelly Handy, our controller, and Deb Chapin, our assistant controller, they're responsible for getting everything prepped, making sure that the district's ready for the audit. Again, it's also unusual for a district our size with the budget this size where we consistently come through the budget, the audit, and we don't have any correcting journals entries at all. This year, the correcting journal entry we had was related to new leasing requirements as part of GASB 84. Which was something that Kelly wouldn't have been as familiar with on how to record that lease transaction in the new regulations. Otherwise, she has not gotten a correcting entry, I know in my time here in the district, and I'm sure well before that since she's been in the district, which is very unusual for a district this size. So kudos to her as well.
That's great.
Any questions at all?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Drew.
Thanks, Drew.
And Dr. Coleman, summer school.
Good evening again. So this actually is provided tonight on the agenda instead of as a workshop as initially anticipated, just as a verbal report. So there are some high-level just changes with summer school this year. We certainly are still anticipating an exciting set of offerings for our students, just due to some scheduled renovation and upgrades to our buildings. There are some changes to our summer school locations. So those locations are here, also included in the report. We'll make sure to over-communicate that out to our families and promote summer school just as an opportunity to keep students engaged. In the spirit of being brief, I'll answer any questions that you might have about the summer school report.
Dr. Coleman,
Yes, sir.
I do appreciate, I think, the refinement of the numbers, more clarification.
Yes, sir.
I'm curious about, I saw that I was specifically looking at the middle school and the participation rate there, and specifically the math and English language arts. It looked like we had roughly 45 or 46, I think, participants there. And my concern is, I look at that relative to roughly the number of middle school students that are not proficient in math or English is roughly 800. And I kind of go, 800 relative to 46 is 5.6%. I'm going, how can we get that up? I appreciate all the other kind of fun things, but kind of those core courses that we know kids are struggling with, I feel like that's really an area, and I know part of the report kind of addresses that, but I'm curious, what strategies do we have to put kids in math and English language arts in the summer, even though those aren't the fun things?
One of the strategies that we're exploring right now is making that a requirement. If there are significant challenges that we see that students having in those subject areas right now, it's encouraged or maybe even suggested, not yet required. So we certainly know that, especially in the middle school, some of the critiques that we and many middle schools around the nation receive is that if a student doesn't pass a class and is not proficient, it doesn't prevent them from moving on to 7th grade math, for example, or 8th grade math. And so unlike high school, we have to earn credit before you can move on. But what we can do is leverage this requirement that the student participate in additional enrichment activities like summer school, for example. So we have not finalized what that looks like, but that's certainly a strategy we're exploring more seriously at this time.
I like that strategy a lot.
It also might be a motivator.
I know that, but
it also might be a motivator for the kids related to the test, right? And so, like, providing that, and I think one of the opportunities that we have now, as we've done some consolidation and modernizing of our facilities, and we'll have air conditioning in all of our elementary schools, that we have facilities that are much more accommodating to have a summer school session where we can spread kids out. And if we're going to increase the volume, which I think is the right trajectory to do, now we've got spaces to be able to do that we simply hadn't had that as available previously. So yeah, I think that's a really good point.
And I didn't ask you this ahead of time, so if you don't have an answer for it, that's so be it. I'm just kind of curious about the projected budget for salary and benefits seems to have gone down just under $100,000. What can we attribute that cost savings to? If you don't have an answer, I didn't pre-warn you, so I get it. But
no, I do have an answer. It's a lot more complicated than what I can provide right now, but I will follow up with you to just as we are anticipating the potential of less enrollment just due to our locations, so that essentially is what we're looking at.
Thank you.
Yep.
Dr. Herzog. Thank you. If we could go to slide 3, please.
Is that 3?
Could you please clarify the difference in those two columns, or those two rows, I'm sorry.
Oh.
Number of course enrollments and the equivalent student FTE.
Absolutely. So the equivalent student FTE, that number comes from a formula that the DPI has determined, and essentially that lets us know how many courses or minutes a student would participate in to be considered with an FTE number. Number of course enrollments, again, so this might be certainly one student taking multiple summer school courses or experiences. So those course enrollments reflect duplicated numbers of summer school experiences or courses that students participate in.
That's what I was assuming, that the top row reflects duplicate counts. We didn't actually have over 5,000 students actual bodies participate in our summer school last year. And with the formula that DPI uses, they calculated that to be 179. So is the 179 what we receive funding from DPI, or is it the 5,000 plus number?
Couple of things. So the funding that we receive, certainly we take into consideration the equivalent student FTE minutes and number of students who participate. So we did make some corrections to our PI 1804 reports, and just based on the information that I received, the corrections did not result in anything that would have changed the funding that we received. So the funding that we received would be reflects that equivalent student FTE and the number of minutes that we record, So although previous reports that were submitted have that duplicated number, the corrections did not yield any suggestion that there was any fiscal impact or budgetary impact on that.
I'm also wondering, thank you, I'm also wondering if there has been some discussion or conversation or consideration given to doing something to focus on our targeted students who would be, I believe, the lower 25% of the students taking the state tests, to make summer school more attractive to them, so that we could maybe operate a summer session outside of the traditional session of the June, July framework. Could we maybe do something into August with high intensity on helping those students get closer to grade level? Because we talk about summer slide, and if we have students who aren't coming to summer school and are behind a grade level or two, I wish we could do something in summer to help them get closer to where they need to be. And for me, it's not about the test score. It's about that student who struggles in class because they don't understand, they don't comprehend, they can't decode words. Is there something we could do in summer to address some of those needs for those students so that they can be more successful in the regular school year?
Absolutely. There are many things that we can do, and we are evaluating the effectiveness of some of the newer strategies that we put in place. One, for example, is the location where we offer these experiences. So instead of offering those experiences at the traditional school site, we're looking at other community sites, for example, the Boys and Girls Club. So as a way to not only rebrand what students might think when they think about summer school, but to host it in an environment where students will be attracted and interested in participating. So that's one example of a newer strategy that we're implementing, and there's certainly things we can do to bolster that strategy.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you, Sam.
We'll move on to committee reports. Dr. Herzog, Facilities and Finance.
Thank you, Mrs. Wyman. I actually have two reports, one from the December 11th meeting and a second one from the January 8th meeting. The December 11th meeting had several budget-related items. One was a budget update from Dr. Davis. The committee meeting focused on finalizing budget reduction agreements following the board meeting of December 10th with community input and with the primary objective of addressing the then defined structural deficit of $6 million. The target reduction goal was then readjusted to $5.5 million. Another step that was taken as a result of that discussion was to schedule an extended board workshop on January 8th to prepare a full proposal for the January 14th board meeting. The committee also noted the positive projection of the district's self-funded plan, self-funded health plan that is, which is projecting a 3% increase rather than a 12% increase that many other districts were seeing. We also laid over to a future meeting policy 7250.02, naming of district facilities. This discussion had to do not only with naming rights, but also sponsoring names, and we laid that over to a future agenda item. There was a reminder to the committee about keeping ADA, that is Americans with Disability Act guidelines, in mind during the referendum implementation. And finally, we ended with a referendum update from Mr. Yerke, who noted that things were trending in the right direction and that bids have been coming in positive, that is under budget projections, and that quite a bit of value engineering had been happening on the front end so that things won't be as likely to be cut on the back end, and that projects were trending positively from a square footage and a cost standpoint. Then we met again on January 8th, and we had a considerable discussion about the district's audit. As Mr. Nehans has pointed out tonight, the auditor noted that we had a clean, unmodified opinion on the audit, and he discussed several points. That the audit statement received a clean or unmodified opinion, which is the highest level of assurance. The fund balance health was discussed at $15.5 million was considered low. which represents approximately 9.8% of the $157 million in general fund expenditures. We also talked about the $12.6 million total fund balance decrease, which was mainly due to spending down capital project debt and a $4.4 million decrease in the general fund, primarily from salaries and benefits exceeding the budget. We also talked about long-term debt and credit ceiling. The outstanding general obligation debt is $81.4 million, which is low compared to the legal limit. However, a slight credit rating downgrade is anticipated because the general fund's unassigned fund balance is below the 25% maximum desired by rating agencies for financial cushion. We also talked about special education, noting that a key driver of the general fund decrease was an approximately $3 million in cost overruns in Fund 27, which was mainly caused by staffing needs, unexpected costs for out-of-district student placements, and individual transportation. We also talked about achieving more accurate budgeting and long-term financial stability, which we talked about earlier in this meeting. The auditor suggested that the district needs to make changes primarily by reducing personnel to right-size the staff and create a better financial cushion for volatile costs like health insurance, as Mr. Nehans had pointed out in an earlier presentation tonight. We also talked about the RFP, that is a request for proposal for our food service program. We anticipate that in early February there will be different focus groups involving students from each level, as well as adult focus groups, and they will include menu sampling and also questions on what type of dietary education they would like to see for their children, their students. And finally, we talked about the differences between fair market value and assessed value, and discussed property tax bills and the current communication regarding the fair market value and assessed value. The committee decided that more discussion needs to take place regarding refining communication to help the community see how a mill rate affects a property tax bill. The meeting was adjourned at 9:03 a.m., having begun at 7:30 a.m., and our next meeting will be on February 19th at 9 a.m. That will allow us to take a look at some of the bids that are coming in on some of the upcoming referendum projects. Thank you.
Can I ask a comment, or question comment? 7250.02 naming, I understand you guys, it sounds like you guys held off the discussion on naming to a future agenda at some point. I believe this initially came up in policy and governance, and I think the hope was that it wouldn't necessarily go to another district committee for action until there was a work group to work through it. And I thought there were even people who were sort of designated to be on that group, like Teresa Dern, and then representatives from the athletic departments to kind of think through what all this meant.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if that's a future agenda item, but I think it was not meant to be something that immediately would be going to another committee until there was some recommendations with community input. So I hope that we can't, it's not just indefinitely postponed.
No.
That we can do action outside of the committee structure. And I can talk to whoever.
Yeah, I can follow
try to get
up.
on track.
Yeah, and I'd like to be part of that conversation as well.
Yep.
Because yes, let's leave it at that.
So noted.
Sounds good.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Legislative Committee?
Perfect, thank you, Mrs. Wyman.
Mhm.
The Legislative Committee met yesterday, January 27th at 7:30. The first item was CESA 6 Legislative Breakfast updates. We talked a lot about special education reimbursement rate. It was originally proposed to be 42%, but will likely come in lower. A document provided from the Legislative Fiscal Bureau suggested that the difference is due to the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction providing inaccurate estimates. A discussion was had how many districts are facing budget problems due to declining enrollment. Second item was Administrator Alliance update. The highlight here was a proposal to spread equalization aid out over 4 equal payments. Doing this would reduce the need for short-term borrowing. Good discussions there. We also had a discussion on how property taxes were increasing across the state due to school levy increases and how the state is projecting an additional $1 billion surplus. Finally, Dr. Davis discussed concerns about federal aid dollars that make up roughly 5% of the district's budget.
The primary concern was that many funds are getting redirected to other agencies given the Department of Education is being dismantled. And of course, the district will keep a close eye on that. Next meeting will be 7:30 on February 24th.
Thank you. And Policy and Governance, Mrs. Smeltnik.
Our last meeting was on Thursday, December 18th, and 4 of the policies that we discussed them have now already been modified pursuant to our consent agenda at our last meeting on emergency nursing services, student prohibited use of various intoxicants, volunteers, and then public comment at board meetings. The only agenda item that we held over for further discussion and clarification was 5330, administration of medication, because of concerns about potential modifications and whether or not nursing staff would be able to administer some of these products under their licensing requirements. So Director Kammerer will bring that back once they have settled that more thoroughly. Our next agenda, or excuse me, our next meeting is February 19th. I believe it's 7:30 a.m.
Thank you. And Mrs. Smeltnik, would you also report on the WSB Delegate Assembly?
So our hot topics of conversation, our last 2 board meetings, the last thing that we always talked about that we didn't. Anyways, we had at the WSB Delegate Assembly, we considered a bylaw amendment, and then it turned out to be 13 resolutions. I won't go through all of them that passed. What failed was a bylaws amendment proposed to allow 2 types of membership in the WASB, Wisconsin Association of School Boards. One where members could remain, to create a category where people could remain members but not pay fees towards organization advocacy, or like legislative advocacy. That proposed amendment to the bylaws failed, 42 to 241. The other resolutions that failed were Resolution 8, Public Education Endowment Fund, mostly I think because people were just really confused about what that means and if it was applicable in the state or not, failed 90 to 183. And then we did talk about this a little bit, and there was some discussion on our board on whether we wanted to support decoupling public and private school funding versus opposing decoupling. We decided to go with the supporting decoupling in the idea of transparency. That resolution failed, 55 to 220, but the next resolution that was opposing decoupling passed because many other people thought that that was the more transparent way to go. So it is what it is. There was an emergency resolution related to advocacy by the WASB, basically encouraging the state to immediately fulfill its promised rate of special education funding, and that passed by the highest rate. 93% of the vote was yes. If you want more information about what the other resolutions were that did pass, they're all in previous board agenda items.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Smeltnik, for representing us and being part of the delegate panel.
It's an interesting experience.
Okay, we have no one signed up tonight for agenda-related or non-agenda-related public forum, so we will move on to the workshop.
All right, great. So we're going to transition into talking about the beginning of our building out and renewal of our strategic framework. And so I want to do that in 2 parts tonight. So the first part is going to be just reviewing some work that I've done along with Dr. Coleman, Dr. Ford, and Dr. Hess over the last 4, 5, 6 months to create just a draft framework to bring to you tonight. So I want to talk through that, give some perspective on where we landed, offer opportunities for that discussion, and see if there's questions on that. Lay out kind of what our path is moving forward, which is outlined in the staff report. And then I also want to transition the second part of tonight's workshop. I want to transition into an opportunity for community engagement. And so we have Drew Howick and Debbie Brewster are online with us right now. They're going to listen into our conversation. I'll introduce them in the second part of our workshop tonight as they will be part of the facilitation for our community engagement process, which I think is an important part of our strategic framework as we're building this out and moving forward. And so from a board standpoint tonight, I want to just begin to focus in on the document that you have in front of you that's named the Renewal 2031, Elevating the Experience 5-Year Strategic Framework. It's also attached in the staff report for anybody at home that is listening in and looking at those resources. So part of what I want to outline tonight is just the desire for us to be able to look at a refined strategic framework as we're moving forward, and to take a look at that in a 5-year cycle, if you will, or a 5-year projection as we're moving forward. So I think that's important for us where we are right now. We know certainly over the last 3 to 4 months, a lot of conversations related to budget, related to staffing, how we are sustainable moving forward, how we're servicing, through consolidation of buildings, servicing 8,500 kids as we're moving forward versus our historic numbers of around 10,000 kids. So there's a lot of renewal that's going on within our system, and I want to make sure that as our strategic framework, as we're looking at budget, as we're looking at reductions, and as we're looking at a lot of conversations around accountability for student achievement, that we can create a framework and a sense of leadership from the board level that can cascade down and be useful all the way down to the classroom level. In high-performing organizations, the strategic framework will set the tone for important decisions at each one of our levels for strategic initiatives that the board will pass, but also looking at what our teachers are doing on a regular basis. And so the spirit of this framework is to really, I think, refine and simplify in the way that it's useful, not that it's less complex, but simplify in a way that it's more useful when we're looking at, for example, our vision, mission, and values to be used on a regular basis, again, within our classrooms, within our buildings, and throughout our district. And so I want to start with just some refinement that's been done related to our vision, mission, and values. Part of what that conversation was, and just to give you some perspective. On the staff report, you can see a compare contrast between our current vision, mission, values, and what the proposal is looking at tonight. And again, this proposal will be part of a larger package that we'll talk about, so nothing to be approved tonight, but just want to start our conversations because the vision, mission, and values really should drive what we're looking at and prioritizing in our key performance indicators for accountability throughout the system. So one of the things in thinking about vision, mission, and values that's been striking to me through just 4.5 years in our system is that we talk a lot about students being community, career, and college ready. That comes up quite a bit. We've had a lot of conversations within our curriculum development about rigor and engagement and the important part of that. So none of that language is in our current vision or mission statements. And so I think it's important to be able to just do some reflection on what is the language that we're currently using in our system that we want to reinforce in our curriculum development, in our teaching and learning spaces, in our operations spaces, and making sure that we can refine our vision and mission so they're applicable in our different spaces and that it's repeatable. And in high-performing organizations, board members can repeat the vision and mission. Classroom teachers will be able to, and paraprofessionals could repeat the vision and mission, and all kind of move towards, kind of rallying around these statements as a way that we can connect and can be meaningful. Values then provide us with a way to be able to monitor, what we see as acceptable behavior, if you will, within classrooms, within departments as we're doing our hiring, when we're doing our evaluations. Our values should be integrated into everything that we do from a personnel standpoint. And so being able to refine, in our case, from 6 current values down to 4, and spending some time with our administrative team, working through the refinement and what the use of these will be. The idea is that 4 provides us with a set of a number of values that can be useful in a classroom and not too overwhelming. And then also providing just an acronym that we can used to reinforce that our values are only important if they drive our actions, and that if we're accountable for those actions and can help hold each other accountable for those actions. And so the proposal with our current values is really synthesizing the current values that we have for our strategic plan and proposing a refinement of those into the IC acronym. So integrity, safety, engagement, and excellence being the values that I see. And the idea is that I can see these values playing out when I go into the classroom. I can see these values playing out at the board table. I can see these values playing out within departments that we work through. And so the IC acronym is very deliberate about making sure that our values don't just live in a strategic plan on a website, but are actually lived out in ways that we can run exercises for. So just as a visual of how I would see this, like in a real practical way, at the beginning of each school year, classrooms set their expectations or classroom agreements of how classes run, right? And kind of how the rules will apply to a particular classroom. And that's different from a 4K classroom to a Calc 2 classroom, right? And what those expectations are. But the idea is that if we have consistent values across the system, those values should be the pillars to which our actions are deemed appropriate and what we want to be able to see out of performance across the system. So the idea is that teachers, as we would begin next school year, would use these values across the system to create their classroom agreements with their students and then across departments with colleagues to say, what does integrity look like in a first grade classroom? What does integrity look like in a tech ed middle school classroom? And so you'd have some uniqueness in applications, but you'd be able to really draw on these values across the board. What you'll see as you would start looking at our values that we use, you'll see some inconsistency across the system. And if there is consistency, might be due to some old programming that we've used and maybe retired, but some of the themes and some of the verbiage hasn't retired. So to be able to provide, I think, some pillars for our staff and our students to be able to follow. I also think there's important consistency with words like integrity, safety, engagement, and excellence with what you'd see in community settings, with what you would see in professional settings as we're preparing our kids to be community, career, and college ready. We should be using that same language and defining that same language. And so that's the spirit to which some of these refinements have been made as we're moving forward. So again, just some of my reflections and conversations I've had within the system. 4.5 years ago, coming into the system, just in the development of our current strategic plan, the vision, mission, values weren't anything that we're really worked through. We're really working on developing key performance indicators and getting into what our current structure is, which I think was a good start. I really want to just emphasize now is our time, like in this renewal process and the importance of the next 5 years for this system, to be able to really be a high-functioning system, to be able to have vision, mission, and values that can be concise, that can be useful across the system. And something that I would expect, us from a board team standpoint to be able to, live and be able to model, again, all the way down throughout our system. So let me just, I guess, pause there and just, take feedback or any comments on that. Just wanted to be able to provide that context because that really sets the tone then for the rest of the strategic framework and the KPIs and then what we'll talk about for community engagement.
Well, I can just say, I hope, a question that I keep asking myself and keep asking others is why OASD? And I guess the question we have to be able to answer very clearly to parents, to families, to stakeholders. I think that begins with us really understanding who we are, what we care about. So I'm really hopeful that this is a process where we as a board and through our community engagement efforts can define who we are and what we want to be. And I think this provides a framework for that discussion. So I'm really curious to hear what others have to say, because I think that's the ultimate goal, is we have to be able to define who we are so we can answer that question, why come here?
I like how we've narrowed it down to the things that I view are very important. I like how the KPIs are divided into the 4 different areas. And especially under finance and operations, those are all things that a board needs to be, superintendent and board need to be accountable for. And I'd like to see that on the KPIs. I think under the culture and safety, the student attendance is probably number one, because if kids aren't in school, they aren't learning. And that would be, I'm really glad to see that on there. I like the division of the student growth and the student achievement. I think certainly both have their merit, but in our district right now, student growth is very, very important, and especially as Dr. Herzog says, kids are coming to summer school, or maybe not to summer school, in below grade level. Growth is critically important, but yet our student achievement compared to other districts is really important too. So I like that all of that is on there.
And one of the things that we'll do different this time around, and as part of this, building out and getting approval for this plan for the key performance indicators, is spending our workshop time February, at second meeting in February, March, and then April, really defining what we mean by these KPIs, to make sure that we know, like when we're measuring the forward exam, we know what we're measuring in the, of what students know and are able to do. Same with iReady. And one of the major shifts, that, again, Tim and Mike were part of, along with working with Sam and I, is the transition from having KPIs in our current model, some of which are inputs, so like a cybersecurity plan, for example, or a safety plan would be inputs, and transitioning from some inputs to having these be outputs. And that the performances, it really should be an indication of the health of the system and our performances within the system. So spending time now with the board over the next 3 months, really defining what those are. Our staff will bring, some draft proposals of, what we believe them to be. But I think it's really important from a board standpoint to be able to just raise our awareness about what they mean. And then ultimately, as we get to the end of that, be able to, have an approval of our targets, so we can then, with staff, move into our work, not only this year, but, with a 5-year plan to be able to, target improvement performance for the system. So a lot more to come on the KPIs. We'll focus on that as we go.
So this, I have been in conversations with Dr. Davis where he's talked to me about this for a couple of months now. So this is not new to me per se. I appreciate the vision, mission, and values modifications. I think I like that they are just practical, straightforward, instead of like fluff. At least I think they're less fluff. I'm slightly concerned that this was kind of come up with the vision, mission, and values. It wasn't necessarily with a lot of input from the community, so I hope that doesn't end up being a detriment. I think we kind of shifted into talking about the KPIs in the 4 core areas as well. I will say that as community members looked at the board agenda items for today, the feedback I was starting to get was it doesn't feel very different. And like basically, like I had comments of, oh, we switched from stars to red, green, and yellow. And what about the substance of how do we know for sure that we're making a difference on students of color or bottom quartile in their academic achievement? And I know that I think you addressed it just now partially, that will be in the next rollout phase of this, in the next presentation. I think that that is critically important. Right now, this is fine. It doesn't, the KPIs don't mean that much to me right now as an actual useful document. So I'm withholding judgment on that, knowing and making it clear that I'm getting feedback already, being like, so what? Yeah. And that's always a problem with any strategic plan. You do a ton of work and it's just like, oh, what does it matter? So we have to be laser focused on making this actually be applicable and meaningful to not only those of us in our own boardroom, but the community as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So again, that'll be a lot more to come on the KPIs, and we'll to get some consensus around what those indicators will be.
And I think it's important to note too, in our conversations when us four we're meeting with the KPIs, the intent is that we want to make sure that we have buy-in into what we care about. We see so much data, but what do we as a board think that we need to see to be able to make good decisions? What does the community need to see to make sure we make good decisions? What do we need to see, that warning lights, to make sure that we don't get caught flat-footed? So what are our leading indicators? So I encourage all of us to just think about what are those data points that are good, bad, that you don't think should be included here, because if people are dissatisfied, I mean, the whole idea of setting the goals around these, that's the hard work. But you can't do that hard work if we don't have agreement on what it is we care about. So that's where we're at. Because I got an email too. I get angry emails a lot. A lot of people hate me. Mostly friends, which is funny. Maybe they're not friends. I don't know. But the same critiques. And I think that's really important that we as a board are able to articulate that we're trying to get us aligned so that we have some buy-in, so we're not constantly talking past each other. Because if we're ever going to set clear goals and be able to transfer those goals so that we can hold the superintendent and admin accountable, so he can transfer that into operational plans, that he can hold his staff accountable, and for the community to truly hold us accountable. It's really hard to do that if we don't have agreement on the things we actually care about. So I think this is the starting point for having that more in-depth conversation. So I really hope that people are able to seriously engage with it and not just jump to negative conclusions.
I don't think it's not necessarily negative. I think it is a fair critique of. It feels like spinning your wheels sometimes. And also, actually to piggyback onto what you said, Mike got a lot of texts from me over the last week, and Brian and Sam have gotten a lot of emails from me over the last week after I went to the WASB conference, where there was things that we don't need to recreate the wheel that we're spinning. We don't need to create, there are tools that can help us figure out the good data points as well, that can have meaning or at least show us good examples. And I really suggest that we utilize those tools, because I think it's a guess sometimes when we're like, oh, well, it doesn't matter if we have this data point or not. Looking at what other districts are doing and how they are getting that data and how it is perceived, I think is really an important tool for us. And I hope we consider that instead of also just saying, yes, the board has to agree on what we are evaluating, and we should be also looking at what our peers are doing.
I know that it's been at least 5 years since the mission and vision have received an update, and I think this is more focused. The only question I have, or the only wondering I have, is under the mission, the new mission revision, which I'm wondering about just changing that wording slightly. Provide rigorous and engaging learning environments for student success. I'm really interested in what the outputs and the impacts will be on however we decide we're going to assess or evaluate these, because I agree that some of the current ones provide inputs, but what's next? For example, I'm very interested in closing the achievement or opportunity gap for students. We really haven't seen much movement on that at all, and I would really like to see that. As I look at these, the sheet that has the green, yellow, and red on it, and I look at the growth and the achievement categories, there are 7 that are specific to students, which I think aligns with the guiding principle of students first. And then if you look at so 7 out of the 17, you can find in those first 2 categories of student growth and student achievement. Plus, if you go over a couple of more rows, student attendance, student involvement in activities. So to me, there's a lot of focus reflected here on students, which I like to see. But as I said, I really want to see what the outputs and the impacts are that we'll be looking at. I'm somewhat familiar with this process, or this way of looking at things with the dials rather than what we've used in the past, because of serving on the Board of Control of CESA 6. This is exactly what they do, and we get regular updates from them showing what those KPIs are, what are the outputs, what are the impacts, and then the color coding. And I find that very helpful. so.
Yeah,
leave it at
and,
that.
and you can probably sense also just the work that we're gonna need to do over the next, like, 2 to 3 months, because, again, high-performing organizations have between 5 and 15 indicators to, just as a dashboard to, like, show their health. And so we're at 17 and have gotten proposals for more already, right? And so, like, that's some of the refinement and consensus we're gonna need to get. So we're not, we don't end up with 25, 30, 40 indicators trying to measure everything when you're not going to get like that specific. So that'll be part of the prioritization process that I think will be really hard, but very, very important for us. And then, our job then is to be able to roll out, strategy and initiatives to make it operational. But having those targets is really, really important, so.
So I got I don't know if you were intending on where we're supposed to be focused on at the moment, that at some point we're talking about the upcoming workshops per se to work through these things, and I don't know if you were going to go in more detail on that or if you were intending on just going into the future search sort of stuff, but I think that's where I have some issues. If I think about what Dr. Ford was talking about a couple weeks ago, saying he struggles with accountability because we don't have anything specific. Well, in part, I kind of disagreed with some of that notion that we did have, board policy that specifically talked about English language arts. But then there are a number of things that I think are just implicit that, like I think Molly was alluding to. If you look at the Real Oshkosh group has been coming and talking to us for years, expecting to see a reduction in disparities, whether it's academic achievement or whether it's the out-of-school suspensions or any of the behavioral sorts of issues. Did we have that written down? No, but implicitly, I think we had an expectation that those disparities weren't going to increase. And so I struggle with, if a board member is saying we don't have anything written down, I'm struggling with, there are elements on this that I question. Do we need to go through a 3-month process to get to the point where we're laying out goals for student achievement? I mean, student achievement is, we had very specific goals in English language arts. I don't know why those goals would be substantially different in terms of mathematics, whether it's a specific number or it's a target for each individual year. My concern is, I think back in June, when we looked at the iReady results, what we were focused on was growth. And the reality is that there's this mathematical relationship between growth and achievement, and that is, you take the beginning of the year, you add growth to it, and that ends up being mathematical achievement at the end of the year. And my concern is that we focused on growth. We didn't even talk about achievement, and I said at the time, in part, that I felt like that is where accountability died in the Oshkosh Area School District, in part because that was where we no longer had any documented goal or target. And so I'm going, that was in June. To say that it's going to take another 3 months to lay something down, I'm struggling with. That I feel like some things we could talk about, we could even vote on and approve. I mean, honestly, some of these things I feel like you should take a day of sitting down and going, here you go, guys, this is what I think it should be, like student achievement. And so I'm interested in getting community feedback, certainly. I want that to happen for some things, but at the same time, I don't want to delay accountability by waiting another 3 months to approve individual elements of this. If there are some things that we can do right away, I would prefer that we do that right away. So that's my struggles with the operationalization of all of what you are proposing here. I'm not comfortable with waiting till after some student success or future success future search thing to get to the point where we actually lay out some goals. I think we're ready to lay out some goals already. But, yeah.
And whether we sit down for a full day or like take the workshops over time, for me, it's just making sure that this board has a good understanding of what those measures are and has some consensus around the numbers that we're actually looking for. Because I think that's part of the issue just with where we are right now in our current plan. And that's an important part, I think, of what we've laid out here. So
I agree. I'll just say I want to get it right. I mean, obviously, we've already heard from two board members who have expressed a level of skepticism for very different reasons. And so think about that. I mean, we have to work through that. Otherwise, we're going to end up in exactly the same spot where we're all going to be fighting about why we didn't achieve something. So I just want to get it right. If we get it right in a day, I'd love to get it right in a day. But I think we just have to make sure that we get it right.
I reflect on the conversations we've had over the last couple of months at public forum and also in the listening sessions. And I see this as a means of building at least some community support and understanding, rather than a group of 7 people somewhat independently coming up with what the answers are going to be, so to speak. I think it's really important, especially as we look out a year and 2 and 3 years with potential budget reductions, that we make sure that we have a level of understanding and acceptance and agreement with the overall community.
I know that when we started Oshkosh for Education, which is now over a decade ago, it reinvigorated Oshkosh and it made the educational system part of our community. I think it's there, but I think a process like this, done well, really helps in bringing the community back. And you all got as many nasty emails as I got through this whole process, and I think it's really important. The community can't understand everything that they're going to, because they're getting snippets, especially with this age of social media. I think it's really important that we go through a thoughtful process, involve our community, and get it right, because until we get it right, it's going to be really difficult to enforce accountability, because, and it's not just for this board, it's for future boards to help them with accountability and understand what it is that we're trying to achieve in this community.
I think my question to that, though, is what has changed? I mean, I remember going to the March of 2023, I think is the one that I attended, the strategic plan. I think it was at the Culver Center. And we heard from the community and we interacted. And we've had meetings every so often. So, I mean, maybe this is the time to segue into what this future thing is.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm struggling with, is I don't know what that is. And I don't know that there's anything so revolutionary to find out from the community in terms of what expectations are about education in Oshkosh. But
yeah, in what
I'll
I
leave
would
it to you, Dr. Davis, to convince me. That
thank you for the segue. However, what I'll say is the community engagement process will be important, and I think maybe revolutionary would be like an overstatement of it. But I think the work that hasn't been done, right, is at the board level and the depth on the key performance indicators. Like, we haven't spent time like digging deep and be able to develop those as a collective whole for a dashboard that we would put on the strategic framework. So that to me is the work. That's what's different. Like, that's what I'm proposing would be different about our process. What the future search process will be, as we have introducing Drew and Debbie, will be a validation of what our work is within the KPIs, or saying, hold on, like what you guys were talking about was fine, but we have other ideas. And so it'll likely be one of those two things to be able to put a kind of a final seal on our process. And so we can get something approved ideally in May that we have spent some time with as a collective board and we have feedback from the community through the future search process. Very similar process to what, Kaukauna is one of the examples that was recently used this process as part of their strategic plan. Use that to be able to develop some of their KPIs. We're on the front end of that, I would say. I want our board to be able to do a lot of that work and go into the future search with a good understanding of what we're looking for, and then to be able to both articulate that as part of this process, and be able to, if we need to adjust or pivot based on what we hear from the community, then we can do that prior to a final approval.
Can I ask
So-
one last question, I
Yep.
think, really? So, when you came into the district, we, at your guidance, from what I understand, I only know this as a community member, adopted the strategic plan based on KPIs at your guidance, and it was what you asked for and wanted. In what ways what have you learned from that, that we are now pivoting from? In what ways has that failed? And again, because Mike and I will continue to go back and forth on this, because I need to understand from you what you needed from the board on that you didn't get, and how we're going to get, if that's what we're saying, and how we're actually going to get there. So looking back, what went wrong, or what's our lessons that we're going to go through this process again a different way?
Yeah, and I wouldn't say necessarily wrong, but just lessons learned in the process. So one would be, as I articulated before, the inputs versus outputs. So I think we were like in the original version of this, looking at a lot of inputs to be able to, what I would say, check more boxes, if you will. And so this is going to be focused more on outputs. I think not using growth as some measures in our key performance indicators, I think was something that I want to be able to improve. The other thing that we've done, and this is more behind the scenes, is to be able to set up our processes internally so we can run initiatives off of what we're seeing in these plans. So we hadn't matured that in 2022, 2023 when we had that. So what you'll see coming off of this then is going to be more strategic initiatives that we can, that we'll step out and have accountability for in the system. So at a higher level, I would say what you'll see mostly is going to be that inputs versus outputs aspect of that, and knowing that that's going to be more results focused, along with just obviously just having a column now for student growth. And again, we'll learn more about that as we go. I think this will be part of the process.
I think another thing that's really changed is the role of the principals. The principals now, as building managers, have much more responsibility and much more input into how their schools are run, how their staff is run. And before, when this was initially put together, I don't think that was the case.
One change that I see in terms of the process you've outlined, including the Future Search Summit, is my perception of the session at the Culver Center and at North High was that, to me, that came across as top-down. That administration developed virtually everything except the mission, vision, values, and shared it with the individuals. And I think the first session was held at North High, and people moved from room to room, and they frequently ran out of time to ask questions. So it came across as, this is it. This isn't a draft, this is what we're doing. And there wasn't necessarily buy-in from the community. I see this as a way of getting buy-in from the community and addressing some of the issues that have come up around this table and in the community around the topics of trust, communication, openness, and transparency. And I think this gives us an opportunity to address that, maybe not on a large scale, but at least on a smaller scale, with some representatives of the community and various groups whom we represent.
Thank you. So I'll segue now to thank you for your patience, Drew and Debbie. Thanks for coming in and spending some time with us tonight. You guys there?
Yes.
You bet.
Excellent. So thank you so much for hanging in there. Certainly heard our conversations related to our new framework as we're working through that. So just want to introduce Drew Howick and Debbie Brewster from Howick and Associates. And so I'll kick it over to them to just provide some initial perspectives on the future search process, and again, how that can help us in our sequencing for our strategic framework, and to be able to have that community engagement to help inform what we end up with our key performance indicators and some of our mission, vision, values work. So I'll kick it over to you, Drew.
Okay, great. Thank you, Brian. This has been very helpful for us just to even listen to the conversation. Gives us a sense of where you've been and, more importantly, where you want to go. So I appreciate that. Brian has invited us to basically accomplish 3 things tonight. One is to orient you to this process called a future search, which will generate information that will become a part of your strategic plan. The second is to get prepared for that process using a design team, which should be a microcosm of your community key stakeholders, 10 to 15 people typically, to help us create the specifics of this future search community conversation. And they will also be ambassadors to your community so that we can get the right people in the room for this conversation. And the third is to share with you, Brian is prepared to share with you a draft of what he envisions as the purpose and outcomes of the future search process, and then the specifics on when this might occur, or where, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to be as efficient as we can to do this. And so Debbie Brewster is a colleague of mine. She has, well, Debbie, maybe you could introduce yourself to the group. Yep.
Hello, everyone. As Drew said, I'm Debbie Brewster. I worked at the DeForest Area School District for 39 years, retired about 3.5 years ago. And the last 22, I was the School and Community Relations Coordinator. So I have been working with Drew since 1999, more so at DeForest doing things like this, what you're going to hear today. And it's been very successful there. And then when I retired, I was lucky enough to be able to help him with other school districts in doing the same thing and helping their communities develop a vision for their school district. So I'm happy to be here and happy to be working with Oshkosh.
And Debbie didn't mention, but she's also the executive director of the Wisconsin School Public Relations Association, or WISPRA, as a leader in the field of communications and public relations. So that's why we feel honored to be able to work together and to help districts like yourself. So we are prepared to go through a quick orientation PowerPoint to give you a sense of the future search process. Brian has been involved with this process when he was at Shorewood, and I got to know him at that situation. And it is a process that, as I'll mention, we've done over 50 of these in all Wisconsin school districts in the last 15 years, including many up in the Fox Valley. So Debbie, why don't we load up that, and Debbie and I will ping back and forth, and we'll quickly move through this to make sure you have a good sense of the process itself.
Can you see that okay?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the definition of this methodology. Keywords have been highlighted in red. It is an effort to bring together diverse perspectives, even different or opposing perspectives of folks from your community, to talk about a vision and to focus on common ground or what they share as priorities as they work together. It is a process that was created about 25 years ago. There's a number of publications about this. There were supposed to be 2 other books on there, but maybe they didn't make the cut. But that's all right. In other words, it is a process that has been utilized around the world in various needs. Debbie and I have taken the concepts of a future search and applied them to school districts, as we said, throughout Wisconsin. A couple of principles that I think are important I just want to touch on that underpin this particular methodology. One is really an important one, which is getting the whole system in the room. And the question is, for you and every community, is who are the right people? And so that varies significantly from communities to communities. People in Kohler, Wisconsin probably have a different community than Oshkosh, different than Shorewood, different than Spring Valley, Wisconsin. And so one of our jobs is to get those right people in the room, and that's what we're going to start to do tonight. The second is this idea of global exploration before local action. We want to make sure we step back and make sure everyone understands the context of what we're talking about here in Oshkosh. So what are the trends and issues, for example, that are impacting the school district and the community? People need to have a conversation and compare and contrast their understanding of what's happening in the school district that's impacting students and learning and the culture of the organization. What are all the external factors that are impacting it? What are the internal factors that are impacting? So it's that whole Sufi parable about everyone having a different piece of the elephant touching it. We need to make sure everyone gets a chance to share their piece, how they're touching the elephant, before we understand and talk about the future. The focus of this is about the future and common ground. And why that's important is because a lot of strategic planning processes often focus on the past and how things have gone wrong. And that is a very different type of energy than focusing on the future and what we want to rally around and see as priorities. It doesn't mean we ignore our past. In fact, we acknowledge it. There's time to talk about that. But we want to make sure we're focusing on what the people in this room see as elements of the future, something that is desirable. And we give them a chance to do that. And when you bring together a lot of folks in a room, you need to be really clear about the roles that they play, how they manage their conversations. You will likely attract anywhere between 100 and 200 people, is my estimate. And when you do that, you got to be crystal clear about the purpose and how that works. And we know how to do that. And the last principle I mentioned is that when we get together, everyone relates as peers. Everyone's on a first name basis, and we make sure everyone feels included and inclusive in this particular process. I believe we have a quick video here that from Kakana. They're an organization that went through this process similar to you in terms of working with your KPIs and your continuous improvement strategy with assistance from CCX. But this is a 90-second overview to give you a sense of what this might look like.
Okay, Yeah, Kakana did a nice job of summarizing and encapsulating their entire event. So that gives you kind of an idea of what it looks like, where the participants are creating the data, they are having the conversations. And so when we look at the overall process, it's really the planning that is starting today, or actually started probably last week. And we'll be doing the planning in 3 months, which is a short time frame, but we feel confident that we can get that done. And what's important in the planning is we'll have the design team that will talk about the logistics, and I'll show you a little bit more about the design team. But it's also important to just get the word out, and we'll talk about that with the design team. But as a board and a leadership team, you can help by talking to people and inviting them and asking them to be there and creating a buzz and some excitement and energy around bringing the entire community together for some really good conversation. Then obviously the conversation itself will take place at the end of April, where we will build common ground about what this community values and what's important for the school district. As Drew mentioned, everyone is involved. You want to try to get as many different people as possible. And then that conversation creates some momentum for as you move forward and you fit this into your strategic planning framework and KPIs, and you have all of these people who had input into that, and it really is pretty powerful. The leadership team, that would be the board and administrative leaders. Tonight we're going to look at the purpose and the goals of the conversation that were drafted. We'll also look at the design team. We want to get that going pretty quickly. And then as we move forward, again, the job of the leadership team, the board members and administrators, would be to participate in the conversation at the end of April. Provide some leadership and support for this design team, be able to answer questions and ask people to attend or direct them into the right place. And then obviously it's important, you're not going to do this unless you're going to use it. So just providing support for moving forward into the implementation in your strategic plan. The design team, which we, like Drew said, a microcosm of your community would be 10 to 15 people. They will be the ones we will work with to really dive into all of the details and make this really important and special for Oshkosh. Clarifying the objectives, looking at all the details of the agenda, providing good logistics and planning for the event so that it runs smoothly and you can accomplish your goals.
So we're going to real briefly talk about the conversation itself. We talked about how even though the focus is on the future, we want to acknowledge the past. There's many ways of doing it, and the design team will take a look at that. That includes anywhere from visuals of the district history. Most communities in Wisconsin we worked with, have a history. Some are aware of it, others are not. We want to try to have a shared understanding of that. And an exercise that we find very powerful to acknowledge the past is to do a historical timeline. And that's where you get everybody up all at once, writing what they remember over the past, say, 30, 40 years as it pertains to things that were happening globally, locally, and in education. And it's a great way to build community in this exercise and to get a lot of information out so that the historians get a chance to tell their story and newbies to the community understand a little bit about what has happened in this community. So we don't spend a lot of time on the past, but we want to acknowledge it very quickly before we move to the present. And the present is basically, as I mentioned earlier, identifying issues and trends that impact the district and the community. This is really a very interesting exercise because people are surprised at the different perceptions they have of issues and trends. You ask students what are the trends in the district, and you compare or contrast that with people who've been out of the school system for 20, 30 years, and they are quite surprised about differences. Same with parents or business leaders. So you give them a framing question about issues and trends, and then in small groups, you have people using high technology, as you can see, right? So it's accessible, and everyone has the same conversation, and they're able to compare and contrast their perspectives. And I think there's one more slide that actually shows this is one group that says these are our perceptions of the issues and trends. We ask them to identify their top 5. We ask them to share their top 5, compare, contrast to the other 10, 15, 20 tables, and people are listening for common ground about those issues and trends. So this then starts to set the stage for the future.
Then we move on to the future, and the group will explore what the knowledge, skills, and attributes that are necessary for students to be successful. And that helps start to create the vision that can address growth and well-being and the evolving needs of students and your schools. This is an example of how one school district introduced that topic. Pretty powerful to have kids asking you, what do you wish for us? So when we graduate, what is it that you want us to be? And so this is just one example of a way that was introduced to the group, that section of the conversation. Throughout the conversation, you've noticed in some of these pictures that everyone is sitting together. We call this mix, where people will sit at tables, and there'll be, perhaps at this table, there's some students, there's some teachers, there's parents, there's business people, older adults, so that you have a really good cross-section of opinions and ideas. But there's also an activity where we work in a stakeholder group. So you can see here, these are students that are identifying what they're mad, sad, and glad about. And the same thing would be done with students will be together, teachers will be together. So you get a chance to have a conversation with your group. There'll be a board table, so all the board members can get together and have a conversation. So when you have 100, maybe 200 people giving you ideas, you will have a lot of them. So this is an example from DeForest of all the ideas, knowledge, skills, and attributes that the group came up with and how many times it came up. You can see there's a lot. And so we have a way of having them go through this and prioritizing and identifying what's most important so that you have something that you can work with. Excuse me. This culminates, the conversation culminates into creating a vision for the future of the Oshkosh School District. So participants will take all the information that they generated and the priorities that they identified, and they will then the last thing they'll be asked to do, or one of the last things, will be identify what is the district doing to realize that future and vision that they just identified. And it's important to, and what I think is really nice about this is that we do this with scenarios. We allow people to be a little creative, and because it really does, it's visual, it's engaging, and what we're asking them to do is show us what's happening. What does this district look like 10 years from now? And groups will do it. It's amazing what they can come up with. Some will do it as a letter to a friend, a newscast, a picture, a reenactment. This is an example of a district. They were saying they were alumni coming back, and they came back after 10 or 15 years, and this is what they saw. So they're describing it in the present, 10, 15 years from now, based on all the information that they discussed in the beginning of the conversation. And they're telling okay, this is what we look like now. It's a really good way to express a vision. And you can see, people do it in a variety of ways. This one, they pretended they were graduates, and it was actually a student who did a lot of the talking. And the graduate was talking about their experience going through the school district. Again, they're showing what they look. So we do this in small groups, or well, not too small, but we do this in groups so it's manageable. And while each group is presenting what this future looks like, everybody else is listening and taking notes. and they're looking for some common themes. What did we hear? What did we see that the district is doing? Like closing achievement gaps, they're providing support. So they find those, they pull out those themes from that scenario that of what they heard and what they saw this the group communicating. So then when you look at if you think about, you have all of these ideas again and all the themes of what the district is doing. You can't do everything at once. You again have to prioritize. And so we asked them, identify which of those are most important. And again, visually seeing what those priorities are for the school district. And it's important to note that we keep all of this data, all the data that is generated by the participants is transcribed. They get it the next day, so they have that information to work with as they move forward. And you have it as a district. You have all of the data and all of the information that was recorded. But we also asked them to prioritize and give you some focal points for what's most important for your school district and your community.
So here just are a couple examples, and we won't read them, but you might take a peek. Uh, 3.0 means this is the third outcome, the third set of priorities from this district. If you looked at 2.0 or the original one, you will notice that these have changed over time. As you would expect, times are different, etc. So they reflect priorities. And again, another district, and what were the top priorities that came out. Many priorities were identified, as Debbie talked about, but we asked them to identify the top priorities. And this is the information that you will find very helpful as you look at the specifics of your strategic plan. And different groups, they call it these events different things, as you can see, but it's quite a wide variety of districts, you know, small rural communities to more urban area, but they all go through pretty much the same process, but they do end up with different priorities. Is that me, Deb? Sorry. Okay, sorry. So then all that is the data that's almost like your commencement. Right now you got to implement it. And that's where Brian was talking about as you're starting this journey of putting together key strategies and goals and then KPIs, et cetera. And that this is important. And it's also important that you let people who gave you their ultimate gift, which is their time, it's important to keep them in the loop about this and to commit to ongoing communication and bringing people together so they can feel confident that the time they spent and their voice impacted some of the priorities. And that's the key piece here. And the other key thing that happens is, as a result of this, you now have many more people in your district who have a better understanding of what you are doing. Now, some people walk through those doors every day. Others haven't been there for years, if at all. So it's important to build this coalition of people who are now more informed of what you're trying to do. So this is where we are in the planning process, and we're over there on the far left. You're the leadership team. We're doing what we're doing tonight. We're going to hand this off to a group of people in the design team. We're going to have an event. And then that's information that will be part of you as the leadership group, board, administrative leaders, to put that into your strategic plan as well. This is not a short-term kind of thing. This isn't about how do we pass a referendum or how do we make changes this year or even next year. This is about a long-term vision, which then you look back and identify specific actions that you might do year one, year two, et cetera, in order to accomplish that vision. But it is a process that does all of these things in our experience.
So all of the concepts that we've just described break down into an agenda, and this is what the design team will tackle. But just to give you an example of one, the first evening, we talk about, like Drew said, we'll talk about the past and start looking at the present. The second session, the second night, we start moving into the future and talking about the knowledge, skills, and attributes that are necessary for success and creating that vision of what that looks like and what is the district doing. And then it all comes together on Saturday morning where you identify the collective vision for your school district and the priorities and come to some common ground on what it is that the community values and where they'd like to see the district move towards.
So that is our overview, flyover of the process itself. We can pause here briefly if there are any questions for clarification, and then we'll move on to the suggested purpose and goals of this gathering.
Where do the common ground and priorities live after these sessions?
Well, that's data that you will use as part of your strategic framework. So as I understand it, listening, Brian and the staff have been starting to put together that framework, vision, mission, and values being part of it. And eventually you start to identify basic focus areas or pillars. And then within that, you need to lay out all the things you're going to do to what you want to accomplish in those pillars. Those priorities that come out of your future search will likely be incorporated into your strategies and your goals. My experience has been there are some things that the community will identify that you will already have identified, and there will also be some things the community believe is a priority, which is something that may give you thought or new ideas about how to accomplish some of those goals or strategies. So that's technically where that information starts to impact your plan and then ultimately your KPIs.
Thank you.
I have a question. We, at this point, have a framework for, until the community event, have a framework of developing KPIs for the different pillars. My concern is if we develop specific KPIs prior to the community event, they may come up with some KPIs that we haven't thought of or didn't think it was a priority. So I'm wondering about the timing of developing KPIs.
Yeah, so my sense is that I like this timing because it gives us grounded in, from a board perspective, our best sense of what the community thinks. And we can take that for either validation or some edits as we would come out of the community event. So it's not, in this process, there's not going to be like a lot of time of just identify specific KPIs and processing with the community necessarily. There'll be a lot of themes that will come from that. So I think especially with where we are from a board standpoint, I think just getting a deeper knowledge of where we're at and what our KPI, what we want our KPIs to be, I think can also be very informative in this space, because the expectation would be, board members engaging the community through this future search process as a way to help inform the community. So I think the more that we know and the more that we've got consensus on what our priorities are in the KPIs, I think the better. I think it makes it go better and can help highlight, and probably with deeper knowledge, you'll be able to better contrast some areas that maybe we've missed. Versus if we're just kind of exploring, it might be harder just to do that compare-contrast, would be my sense of it.
I had a similar question, and I appreciated Drew's response where he said it likely shows up in strategies and goals. Mm-hmm. So I think that's sort of the data points, the how, and I think that's hopefully can work within at least the outline of this framework.
It will, and I've got a document that I'll introduce, and maybe I'll do that at the end of February, that will show kind of a plan on the page of where we'd identify those strategies and how they would connect to the KPIs. So we've got a process for that that's already set.
But I presume, to Beth's point, if something comes up that's just so obvious that we didn't think of, we could add it.
We could adjust.
Yeah, and I think we should. That's why I think we
Yeah.
should wait to approve the framework and the KPIs until after we've processed the community engagement
Absolutely.
process.
So here's my struggle, and maybe Drew or Debbie, you can maybe help me with this. You know, I think one of the last slides said something to the effect of, we need to be able to support the community's direction, and that makes an assumption that this is in fact then going to be the full community's opinions as to what should happen. And what I struggle with is, I recall when we were trying to solicit feedback from the referendum, that we were getting a whole bunch of comments as to what we should alter, what we should do with it. And I had kind of suggested at the time that there's going to be a whole bunch of people that just, they don't buy into this at all. And so you're not really soliciting the entirety of the community. You're getting just those people that want to come and participate in something like this. And so, and when I consider the referendum, I would say, well, you got roughly half the community that said, yeah, they supported it, and it was awfully close to half that said they didn't. And so my concern about this is, how do I truly get the opinions of the entirety of the community? Or you're saying we can get all of this data, and I'm going, but is that data reflective of truly where the whole community wants to go? Or does it leave out a large segment of the community that just had no interest in participating in this in the first place? And I don't have a good solution for how to convince those people to come and participate in this. And so that's my struggle, is I look at, what am I going to wind up with at the end of this? And am I really going to sit there and believe that the end result of this is going to be truly the notion of what the community wants, with an expectation that the entire community is going to get behind this? I don't think that can happen. Now, that said, we got to solicit feedback somehow. I get that. I will be happy to participate in this, but I'm just struggling with knowing ahead of time I'm going to question what it is that I'm getting out of this. I'm very hesitant about that, so I'm kind of looking to you guys who have had substantial experience. How do I get the full perspective of the entirety of the community, or does this sort of approach naturally have a selection bias behind it?
Could I offer one suggestion? I mean, one of the first things they say is that this needs board engagement on it. If we have board members who are saying, I don't think a bunch of people are going to show up and they're just not going to be part of the process, that's not helping us move to a better future. So I understand that, and I mean, obviously, I do my best to give feedback and to show my displeasure and things, and we've got to figure out how to move this district forward, and the board needs to figure out for itself, each member, as to why they think that this kind of exercise is a valuable tool to better serve our students. And that's on us to help be ambassadors for that.
And I'm a quantitative person, and you're proposing a qualitative research thing. I'm going to struggle with that to begin with. So,
Drew, did you guys have insights into that?
Well, it's a complex question, and I appreciate it. People will select in or out for so many reasons, some of which we understand, many of which we don't. We need to do our best, the collective we, to make sure we can make a case for why this is important for the citizens that you serve, to be willing to contribute to a shared vision of possibilities. So that's why, as was just mentioned, the board serves an important role. Your design team need to be ambassadors, which is one reason we don't ask board members to design this. We ask people from around the community who are well-respected leaders in their stakeholding group to participate. They become ambassadors. The district will have a very comprehensive communications plan to try to get at the populations they feel are important to participate in this. You can probably already identify certain people that will come to this because that's what they do. We want to ask the question, who needs to be here and how do we get them there? And that's a combination of design team who know different audiences in your community, responding to that question, along with professional support from your communications and public relations people, and yourself, to try to do our best to get the right people in the room. Having a lot of people is helpful because the probability of having a lot of people generating the right people is high, usually. But to me, it's not as important that you get a lot of people, but you get the right people. And I don't know, Debbie doesn't know who they are, but you do, and your design team will. So that's an important function that they play. So hopefully that when this event happens, you look around the room and you say, you know, we've got a lot of good folks here, including people who have been critical of the district. That's important. We want to get the naysayers and your critics in the room because they're going to be critical in the room or they're out of the room. We want them in the room. And if their perspective is something that's shared by many, many people, there's common ground around that perspective, we want to hear it. So a general response to your question, it doesn't take away the uncertainty of, you know, do we get everybody's voice? Probably no, but we want to get the right voices, and you'll help us to do that.
We were all asked to bring names to this meeting, that was our homework, that we could share with Brian to invite people to these sessions. And so if you know people who would like to be part of this or have some issues with the district, submit their names. We want to hear from everybody.
All right. So Brian, you want to introduce, transitioning here a bit to what you see as the purpose of this, and get some feedback, and then also talk about the candidates that you've identified potentially for the design team.
Yeah, so I have a sheet in front of board members just to look at a potential purpose and then goals. This is something that we'll work with the design team to finalize, but just wanted to be able to just get some perspective of as you would read through these. These are consistent with what was presented in the presentation of the process that's been done in other districts, and this is very similar to, again, the process that was done in Kaukauna, a couple of years ago, and I think fits well with what we're looking to do with this, which again is inform our strategic framework and strategic priorities as we're moving forward, so we can set strategy and be able to move our system forward. So I'll take any feedback that anybody has that's related to the strategic direction. Again, don't want to repeat necessarily because it was part of the presentation. Then on the bottom of the page was looking at the design team. So two different aspects. The design team being the team that will be like the ambassadors, if you will. We look for 10 to 12 people to be part of that team. So I'm going to ask one of the ladies to see if they're interested. If either of you or both of you are interested in being part of that design team, we'd love to have you just as student representation and as ambassadors, because we want to be able to get students to be part of our event also. But the design team is set to just be the, again, ambassadors and the leaders in the development of this. And so So just identified some different constituencies and people to be able to have just on an initial list. But again, as Dr. Herzog said, certainly interested in having different perspectives, or if there's groups that were missed on there, then be able to have that done. We'll have teachers represented on here also, so that's a group that we'll have to be part of this process as we would move forward. So if there's suggestions about different groups, again, we want the design team to be like 10 to 12 and not 20 to 30. So there needs to be some prioritization and winnowing down. But we thought if we can do that collectively tonight, spend a little bit of time on that, then we can get that design team up and running and hit our hard timelines. So.
I'm just curious on the ones where it's like you gave leadership people in fairly high roles at like UW Oshkosh, Fox Valley Tech, the chamber, the city administration, and the county exec's office. Would you give them the discretion to say, hey, not me, but someone else? Because I can't imagine some of the people, especially, the head of states at like the county board or the county executive or the city administrator, that they themselves might not have the.
Yeah, I think representation.
Okay.
Yeah, representation in their group, and again, looking for people that can be ambassadors, that would be influencers in the system. That isn't necessarily maybe the head, but just as a starting point.
Brian, I don't think we mentioned that the design team will meet 3 times, February, March, and then early April.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So that's this group.
Yep.
I think it's also important to have, or let me ask it this way. Do you find that the design group then has sub-leaders to involve the community? For instance, somehow I got another list, stakeholding group for public education, future search, and it had service organizations and daycare and social services and senior citizens and mental health providers, and those are very important groups. And I just want to be sure that whomever is on this 12-member design team is also reaching out to many of these subgroups, or we have to hear from them.
Yeah, I think, let me take a shot at that, Drew and Debbie, and then you guys can reinforce it. So what I recall from our process in Shorewood is that we did just that. So the design team got together and identified in the community who needs to be in the room, and then be able to just divide and conquer to make sure, have a VIP list and have those people get personal phone calls from the design team members. And so if each person takes 10 people, for example, and we make sure we map that out, that's a process that we use, along with sending postcards to everyone in the district to be able to, so everybody gets an invite to it. But to your point, having kind of a subgroup or a VIP list helps build that out too. So is that accurate, Drew and Debbie, or is there other strategies that have been helpful?
Yeah, we want to differentiate between identifying a design team and identifying people who will participate in the actual event. The design team, just size-wise, just needs to be manageable given the work they need to do, so that 10 to 15 people is a good landing zone for that group. But they also are folks who know all sorts of folks within the community in a lot of different stakeholding groups. So I think what Brian's attempted to do, he says, these are the key stakeholding groups that we want to make sure are represented on the design team. But these are the folks also who would identify individuals throughout the community that you make a special outreach to. But do know that anybody who has a stake in the Oshkosh School District is invited to participate. And we know that when we say everyone's invited, nobody shows up, right? They think someone else is going to show up. So it's a combination of targeted invitation to folks that the design team know and think that would be really important to be there, and a broadcast throughout your community so that everyone is welcome. And then that combination, in our experience, is what gets the right people in the room. But this design team plays a real important role in trying to identify folks within the community they want to make sure get a special invitation and attend.
So any additional feedback just related to purpose, goals? Does that seem like that would hit the mark based on the presentation? And then certainly I can take feedback, throughout this week with the design team and finalize that as we move forward, but just want to do as much tonight as we can.
To be clear, if the people whose names might be appearing on the public access TV right now, these are just ideas that have been submitted, to be very clear.
Yes.
They are not already signed up or anything like that.
Correct. Just, placeholders at this point, so.
No, the goals make sense to me.
I agree.
And if we have additional names, just send them to you?
Yeah, yep, send those to me. If you can do that by the end of the week, and then that'll allow me to synthesize that and get the design team rolling. And again, we'll have future communications on this. Design team will meet February, March, and early April, and we'll have a lot more communications just coming out about the event, just to be able to raise awareness of it. So.
And the design team people need to be like doers, like they're rolling, like.
Doers and connectors. I think the connectors piece is probably the bigger lift. Yeah.
So we said 3 meetings for the design team. What's the time frame for each meeting? How much time are we talking about?
For the design team? For
the design team, yeah.
Yeah, Drew and Debbie, what's typically for the design team, like, meeting 3 times, extent of that? How long does that usually take?
Usually about 3 hours. It's like an evening meeting.
Okay.
3 hours each time.
And I'll just build on that. In addition to identifying community members that they want to make sure are contacted about this, we go through the actual design. We have a framework, of course, for that past, present, future, and activities that you saw. But there's a lot of decisions to be made that would reflect the community. And so these are individuals who get to create and submit ideas about specific activities and how to frame them up, etc. So within the Future Search framework, there's variables. These are people who, knowing the community as they do, can help us craft those variables.
Okay, great. Well, Drew and Debbie, I appreciate your insights tonight. So we'll be in touch by the end of the week. I'll collect names here and see if there's any changes. Sounds like the purpose and goals are on track. So if there's any other feedback, I'll let you know, and we'll be in touch soon. So thank you so much for your time tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Look forward to working with you.
Yes, absolutely.
That was very informative. Questions, comments before we move on? Okay. Moving on to Brian, anything that you want to say to round out the conversation?
No.
Okay. Okay, moving on to the consent resolution agenda. Board's been furnished background material on each item, blah, 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 blah. Is there a motion?
So moved, Barb.
Second, Kelly. Hess.
Aye.
Snutley.
Aye.
Wyman.
Aye.
DeWitt. Aye. Ford.
Aye.
Herzog.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, and we have one individually considered resolution. Is there a motion?
So moved. Molly.
Second, Mike.
And that's approval of 26-27 open enrollment of space availability. Any discussion? Okay. Call the roll.
Snutley.
Aye.
Wyman.
Aye.
DeWitt. Aye. Ford.
Aye.
Herzog.
Aye.
Hess.
Aye.
Resolution carries.
Thank you. Request for future items for committee review.
I have one that I think I'd like to go to education if we could. I am curious about gaining more information about kind of like, I know it's a loaded term, but tracking of students and like use of kind of applied or basic classes at each of our high schools and what paths kids might be placed into. How many kids in each of the schools are in that and how they are set up for those starting as early as middle school or even earlier, I'm guessing. And just, so I guess it's related to course enrollment and availability of courses. Okay.
Yeah, I think Education Committee would be appropriate for that.
Very good. Announcements?
I was going to give a small update on like what I learned at all those sessions I keep telling you guys about. I decided to just send that in an email that hopefully be attached to the weekly memo to board members. If anyone in the community wants my thoughts on it, I'll send you the link as well.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you again for all of everything you did at the convention.
I'd like to give a shout out to Matt Kemmer, who was honored at the Wisconsin State Education Convention last week as the Outstanding Pupil Services Director of the Year. I hope I got that title right, or somewhat close.
Well done.
Anyway, congratulations.
And thank you. Oshkosh was very well represented for us to have 2 sessions for people to attend to be able to promote Oshkosh. I thought looked really good. Okay, we will now be adjourned to executive session where we will be considering the disciplinary data of a specific person.
So move. Barb.
Second, Mike.
Yes. Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
All
Aye.
right.
Aye. Thank you.
Good, yourself?